CHP. One new day, old habits. Beep, beep, beep. The bane of his existence. Wow, he hated that damn noise. It was just a nuisance. All it does is make a noise in the attempts of waking someone up if possible. But what if that person just turns it off? What purpose does it serve then if the person who's trying to wake up just reaches over and turns it off, or unplugs it, or maybe takes a hammer to it? The person who invented this damn device deserved a shot. It especially had no usefulness in his life. I mean, come on. Why have an alarm clock if you knew you were also going to receive a follow-up morning call from one of the assistants in the house? He had gotten into a habit of hitting the snooze alarm about 3 months ago and was always able to get at least 15 minutes of extra sleep. Unfortunately, though, for the poor boy, this didn't last, but 2 weeks after his father became fed up with him waking up late for his morning exercises. A follow-up wake-up call was administered for his morning routine, usually consisting of an elderly man with long white hair tied in a ponytail style, using a minor jutsu to dump water on the boy's head, effectively waking him up in a foul mood. Not today, the youth said to himself, reaching over, turning off the damn alarm, resisting the urge to use it as a shuriken and chuck it at the wall. That would end the pain. He sat up in his bed and looked around his spacious room, kind of upset with all the expensive, decorative items strewn across it, given to him as a gift. But he knew better. It was only to get on friendly relations with his father in hopes of swinging decisions or favors in their direction. It was disgusting to him. The boy would love nothing more than to spit in those arrogant, smug bastards' faces for the way they used him to get to his father. But he just couldn't do that. That would tarnish the reputation of their beloved clan. Plus, he wouldn't be able to look his mother in the face again. He just accepted it, bowed in thanks, and took the gift and put it somewhere in the vast amount of space his bedroom had. Desks and tables of elegant design, some engraved with mesmerizing designs. Others had magnificent gemstones embedded in them. Scrolls hung from the walls with amazing images painted on them or significant proverbs written on them. He had a dresser with a mirror built into it on the far side of the room. The mirror, as well the dresser, embroidered with amber-colored gems that seemed to shine forever, even with the dimmest of light provided by the moon. His bed was his favorite gift, though, for he actually got the most use out of it. The mattress was made up of soft, exquisite material that made it just conform to the user's shape, giving both firmness yet comfort. The sheets were thin, delicately made out of silk in a dark orangish color, and the comforter, which was thick and made especially for the coldest days of winter, was large, covering all of the bed, but was currently kicked onto the floor because it made him too freaking hot in the evening and was patched with many diamond-shaped patterns, with the symbol of the village sewn into it. The framework of the bed was four-poster, each post having a large amber-colored sphere at the top, connected to the bed by thick, yet smooth, poles with lightning designs carved into them. The head of the bed, which was littered with pillows, though he only needed 2 or 3 to sleep, had the design of the village made by steel and connected to the 2 head posts. The bed was king-size as well, making the young boy feel quite small in comparison. He heard the familiar, telltale sound of a pair of rather large sandals, probably belonging to a rather big man, making their way to his room. The sound came closer and closer, then stopping as the sound reached right outside his room. The boy could see the shadow of the man from through his sliding door, the material on the doors never being thick enough to stop light from being seen either inside the room or outside it, or thick enough to stop anyone from seeing an intruder outside the door. The door began to open and a head popped through the doorway. Looking inside to see the condition of the young boy he was told to check up on. He saw the said boy in his bed, but instead of still laying down, like he had been numerous times before, he was now sitting up and looking straight at the man. This man seemed to be rather tall, like the boy assumed, his wild white hair finding only some semblance of order in the form of a ponytail style, even though the hair was still extremely long, shaggy, and looked unbearable. As this man looked at the boy, he realized something was amiss. The boy was smiling at him with an ever-arrogant smirk, 2 fingers pointing in an area above the man's head. He looked up to the area the child was pointing at, only to be hit from above by a puddle of water, which instantly soaked the man's head and the top part of his clothes. His hair matted down now with the moisture from the water. He raised a hand up and batted some of his bangs out of his eyes and looked at the boy with a hint of annoyance, but it was quickly diminished when he saw the boy holding his sides and laughing at him with such glee. Yeah, It may be a bad way to start out, but at least he won't be such a brat this morning. So you mastered that one, did you? Just thought I'd give you a piece of your own medicine. But yes, I did finally get it mastered. The technique was simple enough. A few hand seals, and one would be able to thicken the air with moisture, then condense it into a small, or if you used a lot of chakra, a large puddle of water that had many uses. The hard part for the boy had not been the whole thicken the air with moisture thing. It had been directing that moisture while keeping it compressed. Kind of tricky, the boy had to admit, but he had finally mastered it after working on it for a couple of weeks. The elder man who had been the butt of the boy's prank cleared his throat to settle the atmosphere and get the boy's attention. Come now, Naruto, it's time to begin the morning routine. Though he said this to get the boy's attention more onto the task at hand, he could not help but be surprised at his speed of learning the complexities of certain jutsus. Naruto was like a sponge. He saw something, saw it done once, maybe needing to see it twice, and then he would practice it until he got it to do what he wanted it to do. He was determined and very strong-willed, always going against what was required from him out of his practices. Naruto's father had wanted Naruto's reserves and stamina to be worked on and increased before they taught him jutsus or any sort of technique, but the boy had found a way around it by spying on anybody around the house, either practicing techniques or doing tasks using minor jutsus. Naruto was a natural, picking up on the Suidan, water-gathering jutsu quite quickly. He even had mastered an earth technique that was meant to soften soil for planting, which was how he saw it used. He picked up on it, studying the hand seals, practicing the control and feel of it, and before the old man knew it, the boy had learned this technique as well. He used it on the old man too, softening the soil so much it created a quicksand, and he lost his sandals thanks to Naruto, who just promptly laughed at him, saying it was payback for dunking him into the stream the day before, during a chakra control exercise. Naruto, meanwhile, was mumbling under his breath as he changed out of his sleek, comfortable pajamas, given to him by a feudal lord from Wave Country, and put on his pure black bodywear, which resembled full-length body underwear. But this material was made with chakra fused into it, giving the wearer a desired comfort in any condition. If it was cold, the clothing would heat up, and vice versa. Another neat thing about it was if Naruto got soaked from falling into the stream, which he did frequently, it would dry off quickly, not leaving any trace the user was ever touched by water that day. This gift was one that he cherished, because it was given to him by a boy 6 years his elder, who just so happened to be the genius of his clan, Uchiha Itachi. The boy's distant looks and oddly disinterested voice were a bit unnerving at times, but he always seemed to be friendly when Naruto was around. In fact, Itachi had helped Naruto learn a small heat-gathering jutsu that, once mastered, could be used in a number of ways. Naruto was explained some of its more advanced uses, like focusing it to such a small yet great degree that it could start a small fire for camps and such, where you could raise the temperature of other things like water. He wanted to test it on the stream that he used for his chakra control exercises when it became frigid, so he could heat it up and make it more welcoming to fall in every now and then, but this one was still a bit difficult. He could warm up a certain perimeter around his body, but he couldn't control it yet, unlike the water-gathering technique. It was going on 2 months since Itachi taught him that jutsu, but he just couldn't get it. And he had also spent some of his time mastering the earth and water techniques he could now use. After putting on the bodysuit, he looked up to the old man, who was a great friend of the family and who was his father's sensei, and who was one of the legendary Sannin, who were supposed to be the strongest team of ninjas in Konoha's history. Naruto felt honored that this man, Jiraiya, had agreed to oversee his training until he entered the Ninja Academy. Naruto would be turning 9 years old this year, and though he felt he could be in the Ninja Academy already, his father told him he would not have that happen. His reasons? Who knew? But his old man always seemed to have a hidden agenda with everything he did. All of his statements seemed to hold a deeper, hidden meaning, and what the real purpose was behind this was anybody's guess. Jiraiya didn't know, though, why the Yondaime had decided against sending Naruto too early to the academy. The reason was twofold. He feared that Naruto might become the victim of possible failure and therefore ridicule if he did not pass. The other reason was, if Naruto passed, he did not want his son to be the subject of many comparisons. This was unavoidable, the Yondaime knew it, but if he could prevent it from happening too early, then he was going to do so. The Yondaime actually feared that the seemingly brotherly relationship between Itachi and Naruto would spark Naruto's desire to attend the academy early and try to pass it early, just because Itachi had done the same. Another reason for making Naruto wait was so that he could pass the Genin exam with the other heirs to the prestigious clans. Jiraiya was also informed that Naruto was probably going to be enrolled in the Konoha Academy to help build his character. Interaction with other young children like him would do Naruto good, or so the Yondaime believed. Jiraiya, now returning the blonde boy's gaze, motioned his head out of the room, which caused Naruto to grudgingly walk to his doorway and towards the meditation garden. This was probably the most enjoyable time in the mornings. He was given the chance to sit down in the presence of such serenity, and it calmed him greatly, helping him focus greatly on the day ahead. It was the same old, but at least there were still things that were enjoyable. This was one of those enjoyable activities, the others being lunchtime and the time he got to himself, which he used mastering the few jutsus he knew. Despite how he felt about going to a public school, he envied the children there. The only thing stopping him from not wanting to go was he just did not want to hear all the talk. Oh look, there's the Hokage's son. Oh look, there's the heir to the Uzumaki clan. He heard those words and saw those looks so many times when he would go into the market. The greedy looks on the store owners' faces sickened him, not as much as the political figures' looks did, but it still made Naruto swell with anger. They may have thought that they were flattering him with the title, but Naruto just wanted to be Naruto. Oh well, guess some things can't change. They stayed at the garden for a little over an hour, until Jiraiya became bored. Naruto, however, had not become bored. He already was to begin with. It was just too routine. He wanted something different, something fresh and exciting, something that could actually grasp his interest. Hey, Jiraiya, isn't it time for breakfast yet? Why, yes, it is. Hungry are we? Well, a little. I just want to do something else. Jiraiya chuckled at the boy before telling him to go ahead and get something to eat. He himself was hungry and wanted something bad, but he had to check in with the Yondaime before continuing with this day's schedule. He was asked to oversee Naruto's training, but he really wasn't teaching him anything, so it saved him the bother of having to actually teach, which was something he disliked doing immensely. The fourth was an exception, though, since he was a quick study. Naruto, just like Yondaime, was a quick study too and could quite possibly gather Jiraiya's interest over time. He also wanted to ask Naruto's father if he was going to actually send Naruto to the Ninja Academy. If so, Jiraiya would miss the brat, but would be thankful to no longer doing babysitting, even if he did volunteer for the task. Naruto's birthday would be a few days away. Why not give him as a birthday gift the freedom from this routine that the boy seemed to loathe? 1 hour later, Naruto had already finished his breakfast and was just walking around the compound when he happened by his mother, who smothered him in unwanted affection. She was an elegant female, always wearing something beautiful to accentuate her glamorous look. In short, she was divine, a work of art, so to say. She was currently wearing a morning robe with a light pink coloring and a darkish pink color to the decorative flowers sewn into the clothing. It covered her entire body except her feet, in which were covered by thick, cushioned house slippers which helped keep her warm during the cooler months in Konoha. They were white, with pink borders, and though they would seem plain and ordinary to some, to those who knew her, they complemented her features. Her skin, while it always looked cold and lifeless because of its pale complexion, made her look like a doll, but it was just another one of those things that made her who she was. Her face was smooth, cheeks rosy, eyes were a lovely sky blue, and her hair was long, going all the way down to the middle of her back, and had a cherry oak coloring to it. Back to Naruto's struggle with her. Yes, he loved his mother dearly, but her affectionate display was always just too much. After escaping her death grip and sweet kisses, Naruto made his way towards his room to gather the essentials he would need for his daily routine. Same old, same old. After meeting back up with Jiraiya, who had an unusually pleased look on his face, they set off for the local stream where they always trained. The area was surrounded by trees, which they used on numerous occasions for the tree climbing exercise. Naruto had actually landed in the hospital a couple times for using too much chakra to try and stick to a tree. The result, a speeding yellow blur flying through the air and crashing into another tree. Expecting to hear the concerned sobbings of sentimental get-well-soon wishers, he awoke to see his father, who only laughed, not at him, but with him. That was one good thing about his father. He could take any bad situation and seem to find something to laugh about in the end. It also helped that it was contagious, as Naruto had joined in with him. That had been about 4 months and 1 week ago, and now the tree climbing exercise was particularly easy. It was the annoyingly difficult water walking exercise that was pissing off the blonde youth. That was why he liked Itachi's training outfit that he had received. So now, here they were, going to that same stream to do the same exercises in the same allot time, all just a boring routine. When they reached their location, Naruto pulled out of a little sack he was carrying a towel and a handful of shurikens. He looked at Jiraiya, who simply nodded and walked to edge of the water, taking off his sandals and tossing them ungracefully behind him towards his stuff. As he stepped onto the freezing water, a wave of shivers going up and heading back down his spine, leaving goosebumps in its wake, he applied a chakra amount and began putting weight onto the foot to see if he had balance. The foot sunk, but only an inch, which gained a smirk from Naruto. So far, so good. Applying chakra now into his other foot, he started putting pressure on that foot when it reached the water, doing everything in his power to even out not only his weight, but his chakra too. It was actually working, and he was beyond happy. He was ecstatic, but he had to concentrate or he would sink into the icy river of doom. So here he was, already performing this exercise at the beginning of his day. Not good. Now he was going to become irritated and bored even faster. Usually the annoyance of not getting the hang of the exercise kept his train of thought busy, but now he would succumb to his anxious tendencies when he was bored beyond reason. He kept applying and reapplying pressure, evening himself out and staying focused until he gave a small grunt to get the old man's attention. Well, Naruto. Looks like we finally got the hang of it. I must say, I'm very, very, very pleased with your progress. You might actually be doing better than your father when he was your age. I'll make you a deal, Naruto. If you can sustain that for a full 3 minutes by the time it is the eve of your birthday, then I will teach you how to perform a more difficult jutsu. Okay? Alright, you have yourself a deal. But Naruto's boisterous response of glee had disrupted his train of thought, and he fell into the frigid waters beneath him. It was like a bolt of lightning had struck. Mind you, he had never felt a bolt of lightning before, but Naruto was positive that this would feel relatively the same. The shock waves that were rippling through him were so painful that he felt like he couldn't move. It was so cold that his bodysuit wasn't working strong enough. He felt like he was blinded, but he knew instinctively where to go, and that was up. After struggling with his muscles to move, he made his way to the top. Upon reaching his objective, he gasped for air like it was a lifeline, which it technically was at the time. After pulling himself out of the water by reaching the edge of the stream and on his solid ground, he coughed a little before hugging his knees to his chest and shivering. Collecting his thoughts, he let go of his knees, performed the necessary hand seals, molded his chakra, and activated the Katan, heat-gathering jutsu. Instantly, his body becomes surrounded by an enveloping warmth that soothed his body and unnumbed any frozen limbs. He could now hear Jiraiya laughing derisively at him, and turning to him, he saw Jiraiya doubled over in laughter. Sending the old man a death glare, he realized that he saw something out of the corner of his eyes. The movement was brief and sudden, but very noticeable. Is that a something or somebody? He chose to wait and see if he saw it again, and, now feeling rather hot, dispelled the Katan Jutsu, very proud of himself for making it work correctly for the first time since he had been taught the technique. He turned back to the water, ready to practice the exercise and stay afloat this time. Walking to the edge to the stream again, he looked at the water, trying to judge just how much chakra he would have to use in order to make the Katan Jutsu work on the entire stream. He decided not to try it and just practice later. If he used too much, he might make the water boil, and then if he fell in, he would melt. The image was unpleasant, so Naruto just settled on using it the way he had used earlier, just in case he fell in again. As he started to step in, he thought he heard something again. He ignored it and waited till he was on the water to see what the commotion was all about. As he gazed around, he noticed Jiraiya's laugh had dimmed down and now had completely stopped. And when Naruto looked in the direction Jiraiya was looking, he turned to look in the same direction. What they both saw, and what threw Naruto off, was a young girl in a light blue kimono with long indigo hair, well long for a small girl, and eyes that were a mystifyingly white color, looking at them while sitting on the bank. Naruto's mouth hung open, really out of surprise that someone else was here, but also from embarrassment that this girl might have seen him make an ass out of himself just a moment ago. She was staring at him as if he was the most interesting thing on the face of the planet, which sort of unnerved him, leaving him even more puzzled about why he felt that way. Jiraiya's footsteps could be heard as he walked towards the said girl who was on the other side of the stream. "Oi, young one, might you be Hinata of the Hyuga clan?" "Hi, I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Am I?" As she said this, Naruto felt something tug at him, like he was desperate for her to not leave. Her appearance was the first non-routine thing to happen in the past month or so. He was also desiring some form of companionship on his own age level. Itachi's visits were always welcome because he was as close to his age as it could get when all Naruto did was these stupid exercise regimens. He walked down the stream till he was close to the girl's location, then took a good look at her. Well, no matter if he hated the reactions he received after he usually introduces himself, an introduction was in order. "Hi, my name is Uzumaki Naruto." "Why, yes, I thought you were. I hope you don't mind that I am here. I can leave if you want me to." She failed to look him when she spoke, her head looking to the side, eyes averted so that she would not even look at him. He wanted to nip this in the bud, but Jiraiya did it for him. "Nonsense, my dear. We were just going to take a break in another hour. You're welcome to stay until then, and I and my young ward here can treat you to lunch if you would like." A vein popped on Naruto's head. "Young ward? Yeah, stay here with us. You can even join in if you want. It gets boring being out here without anyone else. So what is your name again?" The girl, still looking down at the ground, as if afraid the ground was going to part underneath her, sending her to a bottomless abyss, began to slowly raise her head and eyes to Naruto. He almost could not believe what he saw. The girl, while not as elegant as his mother, was still pretty. Naruto liked to use that word more than cute, because he thought the term cute was a derogatory term used on people who were more mature to see it as a compliment you would give to a child of 5 years or younger. The term pretty was a more definite explanation on how one would see someone else. Plus, it was a term used specifically on girls, so it just seemed appropriate at the moment. Her hair, while short overall, could be considered long on her small body and had a glow to it, as it seemed to shine in the sun. The indigo blue, which seemed very faint and hard to notice, actually shined when the sun beamed on her hair. Her bangs looked like they might be unruly, despite the fact that they looked like they were well treated and tended to. She had 2 bangs come down the sides of her head that were long enough to go past her ears to halfway between the bottom of her ears and the jawline. The skin complexion was of a pale white, but did not look so dollish like his mother did. Instead, coloration of the skin was actually a creamy white, which was enhanced by the seemingly obvious fact that her skin was smooth. Naruto figured it was obvious because it just seemed like you could see it as clear as day. And even though the kimono she wore was covering up most of her body, Naruto believed that she was small and frail. It was when she looked him right in the eyes that he saw that he had made a miscalculation on the appearance of her eyes. They were not pure white like he originally thought, but had a light purple color to them, like lavender. She had no pupils in those eyes, but the lavender areas seemed to move around like a pupil would, so he just figured that was how her eyes worked. When she spoke, he snapped to attention, slightly startled for he had been wrapped up in his mind, taking in the appearance of this young girl. He had not been wrong about her, though. She was pretty. "I'm Hyuga Hinata. Pleased to make your acquaintance, Uzumaki Naruto." "You don't have to be so formal around me. You can call me Naruto. I'd actually appreciate it. Saying one's full name shows that you have a deep respect for or hold with high honor the spoken person. Would you mind if I called you Hinata?" Her mouth seemed to drop in surprise of his statement, which raised Naruto's interest of her. Is she surprised that I spoke like that? Or is it that I just want to call her by her first name? Did I insult her? Wait a minute, Hinata. That sounds a bit familiar. Come on, Naruto, think. Hinata. Hyuga Hinata. That's IT. She's the eldest daughter of the head of the Hyugas, which makes her the heir. Crap, I probably did insult her. I apologize if I insulted you. I meant no disrespect. Why you don't have to apologize, really? I do not mind if you call me by my first name, as since you have said I could do the same in Naruto. Naruto, meanwhile, was a bit speechless. Hinata was the exact opposite of her father. He remembered seeing the head of the Hyuga house, Hayashi was his name, if he was correct, when he was little with his father, and his father made him bow to Hayashi out of respect. He wondered if she was made to do those things as well, if she was as displeased about traditions and the sort being forced onto her. He realized that he had been on the stream for quite a while now, and he was shocked that he hadn't fallen in yet. What the heck? I've never stayed atop the water when my attention is not focused on the task. He turned his head towards Jiraiya, grinning a sly, fox-like grin. Jiraiya, in response to the look, took in Naruto's presence and understood what the grin was about. Naruto had been on top of the water for over 3 minutes, closing in on 5 minutes, actually. He couldn't suppress a small chuckle as he looked at this boy who had inadvertently won the bet they had taken up. All right, well, Naruto, seems you win. Congratulations are in order, but I think a simple break will do. When you get back, he cut off right there, for he did not know whether or not to start the boy on such a difficult exercise or to go ahead and teach him the technique. How about this? I'll do one of two things when we get back from this break. I will teach you either a new jutsu, like I promised, or I can teach you a new chakra controlling exercise, which, let me explain the benefits before you say you don't want this, will assist in 3 stages of combat. It is very complex and difficult, but if mastered, can lead to the use of one of your father's trademark techniques. Choose. Naruto, who had made his way to land, not noticing it was on Hinata's side of the stream, was going to just choose the jutsu at first until Jiraiya explained the chakra control thing. If Naruto analyzed both scenarios, he would come to the conclusion that whether he chose one or the other, he was going to have to dedicate a great deal of time and effort to the study of either one. He wanted desperately to learn a new jutsu, but this chakra control exercise sounded, if it would lead to the use of one of his father's more powerful techniques, like it was a special gift. He just didn't know which one he wanted. Wait a minute, even if I choose the exercise, I can still learn the new jutsu because he owes me a jutsu. It was part of the bet. Hee awesome. All right then, I choose the chakra control exercise. But I want to make clear to you, old man, that you still owe me a jutsu as part of our bet. Naruto, learn to treat me with respect, baka, or I won't teach you anything, period, understand? Igiriega Jiraiya Sensei. I promise. That's better, and don't worry, I'll teach you a jutsu, a good one too, when you're ready. But for today, we will dedicate the rest of the day to learning this new exercise, all right? Good, then I say we go ahead and get lunch. It was about 11 a.m., but Naruto would take it. A break was a break. Plus, he hadn't really been all that hungry when he first woke up, so he only ate a couple bananas. He then realized that he had forgotten about the young girl, who he was standing close to. He turned to look at her and noticed she was fiddling with her thumbs. She actually looked to be doing this in a nervous manner, although he could be reading too much into her behavior. As a matter of fact, he just met her, so it wouldn't matter if he could not read in her behavior, since he wouldn't know if he was right or not. A thought then popped up into his head, and he cleared his throat. The girl, Hinata, jumped a little, startled by the sudden noise Naruto made. Hey, Hinata, would you like to join us for some lunch? He didn't know why, but he wanted her to say yes. He felt like he'd be hurt if she said no, and that confused him too. He looked at her expectantly, hopefully, awaiting her response. She looked up at him, saw the look in his eyes, and couldn't help but get that same feeling she would get in other situations similar to this one. Hinata was just a good-natured girl who always wanted to please everyone around her, especially her father and his company, and she couldn't stand to displease anyone. The look in the blonde's eyes was one of those looks that made her feel guilty if she were to disagree or give a response that would displease anyone, and so she knew she was going to say yes. The only difference this time is that she actually didn't mind. This boy seemed different from all her family members, or the kind of guest you would expect a royal or noble family/clan to receive. All the young children who would visit during those times would either be intimidated by her eyes, which always hurt her, or would be so stuck up and snotty that they would want her to do things they wanted to do. If she didn't do exactly what they wanted to do, they would throw a temper tantrum, run up to their mothers or fathers and complain against her, which would have an end result of her getting berated by her father for embarrassing him and the clan. This boy, Naruto, however, seemed different. He asked her, instead of demanded, if she would accompany him and his mentor for lunch. While she didn't know why, she would be happy to accept as long as she didn't get in the way. Again, her side of not wanting to displease them or being a burden on anyone interfering with what she actually wanted to say. I'd be delighted. Just say that. I'd like that. Unless I be a bother or dash. Nonsense, young one. I will escort you and my young apprentice to a place of your choosing. Jiraiya said, cutting Hinata off. He gave Naruto that be respectful and ask look, which Naruto knew what that meant. I'm supposed to be a good boy now and ask where she would like to go as well. Damn manners. Yeah, where would you like to eat? Jiraiya will treat us. The mischievous grin he gave Jiraiya made the man gulp and causing a giggle to come from the girl who tried to stifle it. After recovering herself, she cleared her throat and said she doesn't mind anywhere, and Naruto responded to that with a hopeful look to Jiraiya. He sighed before agreeing to go to the boy's favorite place, Ichiraku's. On their way out of the little clearing back towards the city, a man with white eyes and a robe with a bandage tied over his head came stumbling out from some trees. Ah, so this is where you are, Hinata-sama. Come, let's not disturb these men. He made sure to be polite about the addressing of her company when he saw that the men were the right-hand man of the Hokage and the Hokage's son, Naruto. He bowed respectfully before Jiraiya, raised his hand, and protested Hinata leaving. I assure you that her company is appreciated as she and Naruto here have become quick friends. Would you mind if we stole her for a little while longer so she can enjoy lunch with us? I promise to treat her, and I don't like to go back on my promises. Naruto had no idea where all this horse crap was coming from that seemed to be spewing out of the old man's mouth like a virus of lies. The man, while faithful, was anything but trustworthy, and quite frankly should be condemned for some of the things that Naruto had caught him doing when he was supposed to be taught by the old geezer. Also, what was up with all the talk that he and Hinata were now friends? That wasn't something you just push on to others too easily, as it could give people the wrong impressions. Naruto found no faults with the girl, but the title friend was just too quick to throw on them since he had just met her. Naruto thought that Jiraiya was trying to do him an unnecessary favor until he saw for himself, out of the corner of his eyes, that she was visibly tense and almost shuddering. He actually became worried for the girl, fearing she might break out into hysterics. Is it the sight of this man, or possibly out of embarrassment? Fine. I will report to Hayashi-sama of your location. Okay, Hinata-sama. She snapped up, one of her hands clenched and going close to her face. He could see she was biting her lower lip visibly, and her head was leaning down, but not so much it hit her eyes, which looked like she was panicked. He barely heard her respond with a simple hi before the man left. How he had heard her from that distance, when he could barely hear her from this short of a distance, was beyond him. Now that he was gone, she seemed to loosen up a little, but he felt a little sorry for her. In short, to summarize everything that he had seen her do, and if he had to make a simple assumption/diagnosis of what it all might mean, then he would have to say she was horrified. The question was, why? And he wanted to know. His curiosity getting the better of him, he decided to ask her of what that whole situation was about, but backed down. That could come later, he decided. Are you okay, Hinata? You look like you're scared or something. He saw her jump a little, still troubled, and that troubled him. You know, if he has done something to upset you, you can let us know. And no, it's not like that, Naruto-kun. Her face flushed a little as she realized she just called him in a gesture that symbolized comfort around one another. Why did he seem so friendly to her? She was unsure, but just wanted to get off this subject. They had just met, and besides, the subject was family-related. Jiraiya, quick on perception of the atmosphere, now without the presence of that man who he assumed was from the Hyuga branch family, decided to save Hinata some embarrassment. He told them both to come on so they could get their lunch. When they reached the restaurant, he went ahead and let the kids order and then made his. The food served here, ramen, was one of Naruto's most favorite things in the world, and when they came here, Naruto would always beam. So happy just to eat noodles, Jiraiya swore the boy needed more enjoyment in his life. He watched as the girl, who was being quiet and seemed to be quite shy and timid, unnatural characteristics for Hyuga, he noted, just sat there, picking at her food until Naruto broke her out of her trance, asking simple things. Naruto may be a grump when he is doing the training, but he was more than bearable when outside of the training. Naruto found himself very compelled to stop the girl's moping, which she seemed to be doing since she hadn't eaten her ramen yet and was just sitting there poking it. He decided to break the silence, and asked her simple things. The rules of etiquette always stated that when speaking to someone formally and trying to get to know them, ask questions if nothing seems to work. He asked her age, what her favorite color was, her favorite hobby, and then if she planned on being a shinobi. The answers in order asked were 8 going on 9, purple, spending time in her family's garden, and surprising to him, yes. He knew the Hyugas were revered for their uncanny fighting style and were therefore fierce warriors. But Hinata didn't seem to have the qualities one might assume you needed to be a fierce warrior. He had learned, though, that looks could be deceiving. Realizing that she was 8 years old, too, he smiled at her heartwarmingly, saying that they both were going on 9 and mentioning his birthday was on the 10th of October. Oh, that's a few days away. Yeah, but my birthday just becomes a quick suck-up day for any arrogant asses who would love to become noticed by my father. All they do is spoil me and give me a fake smile, wishing me an insincere happy birthday, and then look toward my father for some sort of sign that he is satisfied. He took another slurp full of noodles and gulped them down hungrily, surprised with just how hungry he was. Hey, Hinata, didn't you say you were turning 9 as well? Are you going to the Ninja Academy? Oh, hi. Father is sending me there to get assistance in my training. Naruto felt she was lucky, but the way she looked said otherwise. Jiraiya, after hearing her say she was attending the academy, was starting to put things into place. For a Hyuga to attend the academy, instead of staying home and learning all there is to know about the Hyuga techniques, meant that that person was seen as inferior. He secretly felt very bad for the girl. The nervous tendencies, the fidgeting, it was all a sign of having an inferiority complex. Are you going to attend the Ninja Academy as well? And Naruto-kun? Naruto almost choked on the rest of his noodles at the question, as well as the kuin suffix. He wondered if he should add the chan suffix to her name, just out of respect. Well, I don't really know. My father didn't let me attend it when I wanted to a year or so ago, so I'm not really sure where he stands on it. I might, but then I might not. Jiraiya did his best to keep a straight face, as he did know what the yandere was thinking. Hinata, however, ended up sulking again. Naruto did notice, but not the exact reason why. Does she feel sorry for me? Please don't let that be the case. After they finished their ramen, Naruto having more than just one bowl, they all decided to head back to the stream. Naruto found it kind of curious how Hinata was still following them. They had treated her to lunch, but that was all she would want to hang around for. When they reached the stream, Jiraiya decided to give Naruto a moment to do whatever he wanted while he went to check in with the yandere and get a scroll or two from the family library. He invited Hinata to stay if she wanted as he left. Now, they were left alone, and the silence seemed awkward and deafening. The only sound that could be heard was that of running water, which was quite noisy and would be distracting if you were trying to meditate. He just sat there, not knowing what to do. Hey, Hinata, Chan, I'm going to start getting warmed up before he returns. If you want to stay, you're more than welcome to, but once he gets here, I'm going to be totally focused on this new thing he's going to teach me. Oh, okay, Naruto-kun. What is? Why are you doing such complex exercises at your age? When Naruto gave her a confused look, she sucked in her breath and tried to get herself ready to continue. I only ask because walking on water isn't a simple thing to master. It isn't something someone of our age, should be expected to do. It's something that I do. I've been taught all these exercises to help with my chakra control because my father thinks that with great control, everything else will be easier for me. So I've been working on all these things since I was 5, and I haven't stopped since. And so he went into explanations as she asked him more questions, she seeming to get over her shyness around him, and he getting more comfortable and actually not caring that he was explaining all these things to her. From his exercises, to his jutsus, to his bodysuit, to personal interests. He was finding the prospect of them being friends a lot more likely now. He totally forgot that he was going to warm up before Jiraiya returned, but he didn't care. He was having fun. Jiraiya was now inside of a rather tall and large-looking building, the office of the Hokage. Its massive structure allowed for many offices to reside in the building with many people who could assist the Hokage from anything between simple paperwork to diplomatic issues. Some people were filers, others were accountants, some ran errands, many were assistants, and the rest were guards. Not that he really needed any, but it was just customary. As Jiraiya climbed the flight of stairs to the top floor where the Hokage's office resides and reached the door, he requested his presence with the yondaime and got the nod from the two men at the door. One was a young man with wild spiky hair going every which way with bandages on his face, and the other had a toothpick in his mouth and had a nagging cough. Jiraiya found it curious that you would have a toothpick in your mouth while you tended a cough. Wouldn't you be afraid that you'd swallow the damn thing? Oh well, if the guy wanted to be stupid, then it wasn't his right to tell the guy otherwise. If the guy wanted to be dumb, then it wasn't his right to get involved. Jiraiya opened the magnificent doors and walked into the spacious room. Big potted plants were in each of the corners of the room, filling it with a heavenly forest aroma. On one side of the office, there was a bookcase filled, in alphabetical order, with all the political and ninja issues from the past 100 years or so. On the other side was a simple little nightstand with a couple candles on it, as well as what looked like to be an incense stick. The yondaime always did appreciate the finer arts to meditation and relaxation. Speaking of the said man, he was behind his desk, which would appear normal to the naked eye, but to the trained eye it looked illustrious. It was made with marvelous craftsmanship, the desktop smooth, and still remained looking gorgeous since the yondaime didn't scratch it at all surprisingly. Behind the desk sat the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Hokage, father of Naruto. His dark green ceremonial robes with black designs all around it gave him an ominous look. Girls might think it handsome on him, but to his opponents and to those who knew him, the robe symbolized his confidence and his love of his village and his desire for the village to be seen as itself and not the representative of the Fire Country. He was the Hokage indeed, but even the previous ones did not ever dress in an attire unfitting to his ninja background. The third Hokage, Sarutobi, wore the ceremonial garbs and robes when it was appropriate, but he always dressed in ninja attire. Sleek body underwear, protective bandages and pads, vests, and holsters. Sarutobi was ready for a fight if it ever came. But the fourth had scrapped that, going in a different direction. When he was first named as the Hokage, he wore the ceremonial red and white hat and robes, but he quickly discarded them, preserving them in a container for the next Hokage, but he decided to wear dark green clothing, symbolizing he was the Hokage of the hidden village of the leaf, not the country of fire symbol of power. The yondaime's love for his people could only be matched by his pride of his village and his ninja heritage. He instead now wore clothing of a style that suited the Hokage of the leaf, dark green smooth, yet sleek, clothing that had the designs of the leaf drawn into the material. On the back of the robe he wore, Jiraiya was pretty sure there was a dark red swirl going in a counterclockwise direction. Jiraiya walked up to the desk and took a seat in one of the chairs, knowing that his at-one-time pupil would have him sit to talk about matters. What is it that you wish to report, my old friend? What news do you feel you need to tell me that can't wait till my off hours? His look was not one of annoyance or aggravation, and his words didn't carry that sound either. It was more of a curiosity than anything else. Well, I just wish to inform you that Naruto has succeeded with the water walking exercise, effectively completing the regimen you gave to me for him to follow. He is now at a level probably far beyond than that of any young child his age. The man before Jiraiya smiled in satisfaction, pleased with his son's progress. He's come along better than I did at that time. Was that all you wished to tell me? No. What I really wanted to tell you was that I had made a bet with the little brat, because he was so confident that if he could remain on the water for a full 3 minutes by the eve of his birthday, then I would teach him a new jutsu. Well, he agreed and set off to try and maintain his balance, but we had an unexpected visitor. The eldest daughter of Hyuga, Hinata. Her presence, I thought, might have distracted Naruto, but he remained on the water while looking at her and even speaking to her for over 3 minutes. Yondaime just laughed, as if he wouldn't expect anything less from his son. The number one was unpredictable ninja. His son disliked the fact that at a very young age, he was put on this training schedule, but he knew that Naruto would appreciate it in the long run. The news that Hyuga Hinata was there instead of at her family's house concerned him a little, but he decided to leave that issue to her family. It was not his business, just like it wasn't the Hyuga's business to get involved with his Uzumaki house/clan. The yondaime tried to piece out the puzzle that was laying out before him, and he wondered if it was her presence that really assisted in Naruto defeating Jiraiya in the bet. He asked Jiraiya to give a more detailed description of the day, which Jiraiya reluctantly did, and he soaked up all the information. From Naruto's mastering of the water jutsu, to the use of the fire jutsu, to walking on the water, to the girl's presence, to Naruto's reactions to the girl, which amused him, to Jiraiya's giving Naruto a choice, which he made a mental note of the fact that Naruto had decided to learn the chakra control exercise since he knew that Jiraiya would still have to teach him a jutsu, to the Hyuga branch family member appearing. Hinata's reaction to the man disturbed the Hokage greatly. To lunchtime, a chuckle escaped him when he heard of Naruto's enthusiasm for Ichiraku, and now they were alone in that clearing. Apparently Jiraiya was here to request the use of an important scroll containing the notes the Yondaime had made on the chakra control procedure and what the steps were. He complied with Jiraiya's request, calling out to one of the guards stationed outside. Someone called Hey to go to his house and get his wife to give him scroll number 3. They waited for a few minutes as he went back to some paperwork until a loud pop was heard with the familiar scent of smoke that marked the return of ANBU members. Hate handed Yondaime the scroll, who pointed his index finger and touched a mark on the rolled-up parchment, which made the whole thing glow bright yellow, and then unraveled. The Yondaime smiled at Jiraiya, telling him he could now unroll it freely and read it as well. Jiraiya figured that it was a double-layered seal placed on the scroll. You might be able to break one level of the protection, which was keeping it rolled up, but you couldn't read it unless you broke the other one. And Jiraiya was pretty sure that the Uzumaki Hokage had made it, so that you had to deactivate both at the same time, or you just weren't going to get it. His pupil was always wily, and he would expect nothing less from him. He rolled the scroll back up, said his goodbye, and made his way out the door, leaving the Yondaime to his thoughts. If he is at this level already, then he might be able to master it faster than I did. The girl's presence seems to have a positive effect as well. Maybe it is time that Naruto learns how to be a team player. I hope you will be happy with your gift, Naruto, because I'm giving you what you want. CHP. 2. A royal celebration. The morning breeze blew through the windows of a luxurious room, filled with exquisite art and furniture, as well as a small blonde boy. Naruto felt the breeze, even as he lay half asleep and pulled the gargantuan bed comforter over him, huddling into a fetal position for warmth. He had come to know that the month he was in, as well as the next 2, sucked so much. Yes, even the month of his birthday, which happened to be exactly this day. The breeze seemed like an ominous omen to the boy, the chill he felt being the cold, clammy hands of doom. It was almost that time he would be asked to awaken and then be forced with ungraceful tact. Naruto sucked in his breath and knew he was going to regret awakening today, but he had to grace his parents and the guests with his presence after all. It was like his birthday was some festival as all the nuts and whack jobs seemed to come out of hiding, the most sinister and evil of them lurking around every corner, waiting with malicious intent to wish him a happy birthday. The only problem was, how could he have a happy birthday if all he ever did was greet and thank people, be courteous in the largest sense of the word, and act like a young gentleman? For Christ's sake, I'm fucking 9 years old. As he gripped the comforter, he sucked in his breath and bit down on the hem of the material, tried to refrain from quite verbally slaughtering the English language. The use of such inappropriate words would seem most ungentlemanly, and his parents would continue to frown upon him as he continued to disgrace his father and the family. The pride with which he took in his heritage could be seen as such an inspiration if the guy wasn't a total idiot. But Naruto did respect his father and his desire for family honor, and he felt that he needed to be respectful, for no matter what, he was an Uzumaki. But back to the reaction of his gripping of the comforter. The boy was now clenching his fists, but not into a fist, afraid to put pressure on his tender skin. The skin of his hands looked much like raw fish. The pinkish raw coloration that the skin held was enough to almost make him sick right on the spot, and the pain wasn't helping too much either. He could see where his hands were burned and scarred, and even some disturbing patches where the skin looked like it was melted off. The pain reminded him of his first day after beginning that damn exercise. That same day where he mastered the water walking exercise, the same day he met that young girl and enjoyed her company as they talked away. When Jiraiya returned, he had a peculiar-looking scroll in his hands, and he set him off to begin the exercise. It was terrifically awful and magnificently painful on his poor hands. The activity entailed him focusing chakra into his hand, which was pretty easy to do. Then he had to start spinning it, and thus the fun began. The stamina training had paid off, as did the building of his chakra stores, but that was why he ended up suffering. He apparently had so much chakra for his immature body that the chakra he was pumping into his hand was too much and therefore was causing him harm. Despite all his controlling exercises which should have made this easy, he could not seem to get the desired reaction that Jiraiya was trying to teach him. The way he showed him was by doing the first 2 steps, and then stepping up to the water, he started to spin his chakra, which gathered water into his hands, which he continued to spin until the water stayed in his hands, and in a perfect form. The form Jiraiya chose was one of a disc. The water was spinning with the chakra so fast that the water was taking the form of a disc. The explanation of why this was so important to accomplish was because that was one of the most difficult things to perform with this technique, giving it form. Giving the swirling chakra a form was the most beneficial way to turn the exercise into a technique for attacking. The countless times he attempted it had been painful and apparently not just to him. He noticed that Hinata, who was still watching him at the time, seemed to blanch when his hands started to sizzle as if his skin were cooked bacon. He was also disturbed by this and couldn't help but curse the old man for teaching this to him. Yes, he could have stopped, but he was too much like his father. If his father was an idiot, then Naruto was a complete dumbass. Night started to settle in as the sun was setting on the horizon, and Naruto said his farewells to Hinata, who did the same. Naruto hoped to see her soon, which he noticed caused her mouth to hang open slightly and a red taint to form on her cheeks. When he returned to the same spot the next day, however, she was not there and did not appear, which actually depressed him. But he focused on the exercise, which left the same results, but this time he passed out by noon from the pain. The same thing happened again the next day, a little later mind you, for he passed out at 1 p.m. this time. Now here it was, the day of his birthday, and he was miserable from the searing pain in his hands. If he had stuck with just one hand the whole time, then that one hand would be nothing but a skeleton by now. No matter how much he didn't want to seem weak to others, a tear managed to fall from his eyes because of the retching pain. He heard the familiar sound of sandals, but it wasn't emphasized from supporting the large frame of the hulking man who trains him, but it was light and temperous. Crap, it's my father. I should have known he'd be the one to wake me up. He tried to sit up and get out of bed before his father could begin, but it was too late. Wake your ass up, boy. It's time to grace the day with your handsome, exquisite smile, my son. Don't be shy. It's your birthday. His voice boomed so loudly in Naruto's room that it left echoes, despite the fact that it was large and there was a freaking window open. Did this man realize that he almost broke his own son's eardrums? By the way he flashed his goofy smile, that was a hell no. Naruto had a rather large bead of sweat falling from him out of sheer embarrassment of his father. Like it was said earlier, Naruto believed his father to be an idiot, and here he was, proving Naruto's theory to be ever so accurate. The bright green ceremonial robe his father wore was an eyesore to the still sleepy Naruto, standing out too much with the wild blonde hair his father possessed. That bastard was responsible for passing down a gene so annoying, Naruto wanted to punch him almost every morning. He couldn't get his hair to do anything. It was so unruly and so unkempt. Naruto feared he might end up looking like a hobo, but at least it could be trimmed, and that was the only thing saving his father from an alarm clock upside the head right now. That and the fact that anything he touched sent tremendous tremors of pain through his arms and to the section of his brain that processed that stuff, which sent a signal to his vocal cords to begin a tirade of verbal assaults that would make anyone flinch and would probably make his mother's ears bleed. Back to his father, though, who was beaming at him with a smile that was infectious on every level of its meaning. You might smile from seeing it, and yet you might also develop an ulcer. The robes went all the way down to his feet, which were covered with a pair of black sandals. In summary, he was unique, all right. Now he was awake and would have to get up and get dressed, and by doing so, his father would see the damage he had done to himself, and hell would probably break loose. Doesn't really matter. The faster this day gets done, the better. It was a shame that he felt he couldn't enjoy his special day, but it just wasn't looking too optimistic right now. He got up, slumping his arms down to hang at his sides as he walked over to the dresser, only to be put in a headlock by his father who, despite having a somewhat average body frame, was unfathomably powerful. Last time Naruto sparred with his father, Naruto's punch was blocked, and with a simple flick of the wrist, Naruto was sent sailing through a tree. His father didn't apologize, just smiled, laughed at him, and said he just doesn't know his own strength. Now Naruto was stuck in a headlock and couldn't do anything about it. Damn it, Dad, that hurts. Can't I get some peace on my birthday instead of having to deal with crap like this? And miss out on the chance to turn you into a sourpuss. No chance. You really need to take these things in stride. Naruto, it'll make you better in the end. Laugh once in a while. Your mornings will be a lot brighter. Kinda hard to smile in a morning when I'm in pain, in a headlock, and was forced to wake up early. Naruto managed between gritted teeth as he struggled with his father. If you didn't use so much chakra in your hands, then you might not hurt yourself so much. Before Naruto protested, he continued, I know, but it isn't the amount of chakra you use, it's the velocity of the spin which gives it its form. You have enough time to perfect it in your life. For years, should be sufficient, if I'm correct. Naruto stopped squirming and processed the information, all of it. For years? He couldn't mean. He was released from his father's death grip and looked up, seeing his mother standing at the door frame out of the corner of his eyes, but paying the most attention to his father. Number 1, it is later than you think it is, and therefore you already have guests. So let's get you dressed. Number 2, he bent down, ruffling Naruto's hair and looking him right in the eyes with the piercing blue eyes. But they were gentle and were sparkling with pride. Naruto had seen that look before, and he was wondering what he was going to say before his father continued. You will be attending the Ninja Academy in a week's time. Naruto's eyes sparkled with happiness that was so contagious. He heard his mother giggle. Happy birthday, my son. I'm so proud of you. Naruto leapt at his father, excited beyond belief. His hands hurt when he wrapped them around his dad, but he didn't care. His happiness and joy was too great and overpowered the pain, possibly the only thing that could overcome the pain. His father broke the hug, told him to get dressed, and they would see him in the common room. Naruto nodded and went to getting prepared. He figured he could make himself more presentable now that he was in such a great mood. He felt he could even stomach those cold bastards' fake smiles. After taking a quick shower, he put on a dark green ceremonial robe, which was similar to his father's robe, and unwrapped the bandages that were already on his hands, rewrapping them in new bandages which his mother had given him when she saw the injuries a couple of nights ago. Now he was ready and did a quick 5-minute meditation session, getting himself prepared to greet everyone and receive his gifts and wishes of happy birthday. He walked down the hall, a quick left turn, making a right turn onto the second hallway, and made his way into the common room, which was already bustling with noise of people. As he entered the room, everyone turned to see him and all busted out simultaneously, "Happy birthday, Naruto!" He was almost knocked off his feet and left reeling from the assault, until he felt someone musing with his hair. He looked in the direction to see old man Sarutobi standing there with a happy grin on his face. Naruto embraced the old man, knowing that he didn't mind him being there, one of the few elder people of nobility he actually enjoyed the presence of. Sarutobi wished him a happy birthday and whispered that he had a special gift for him. He heard that all the time from most of the elders that gave him gifts, but coming from Sarutobi, it actually meant something. Naruto broke away from the old man, planning to find his father and start with the whole greeting and gesturing thing until he saw a familiar figure standing in front of his father, with light purplish robes, long hair, and Naruto was pretty confident about this, white eyes. He walked to the man and his father, stood before them both and bowed respectfully to Hyuga Hayashi. An odd thing happened though as the man, who looked serious and as stuck up as it comes, chuckled at him. That will be all of that for today, young boy. It is your day, and I have given you a gift that I think should be suitable, as has my daughter. Hinata? She's here. He was actually very interested to know if she were here. This caused the Yondame's eyebrows to raise. Looks like my boy has made a friend quite quickly. Yes, she sort of insisted she come here. He looked like he rolled his eyes when he said that. After he spoke, as if by magic, Hinata appeared from behind Hayashi, with a small smile on her face as she looked at Naruto. Hayashi moved to give his daughter less cover to hide behind. Don't be shy, Hinata. Come on and say hello to the guest of honor. She clenched her fists but managed to look up at him in the eyes and smiled again, giving a small bow as well. Hokage de Naruto-kun. Thank you, Hinata-chan. Chan. Kun. Didn't know those two were that friendly. He thought it was interesting how all his plans seemed to have unexpected, yet very convenient positive outcomes. Maybe their presence together in the academy would boost their performance. He would have a discussion about it with Hayashi later over a cup of tea. Then the ominous, yet benign, presence was felt of a familiar figure. Ha ha ha, he made it. Naruto will get a kick out of this. He saw that Naruto had noticed it too, for he managed to break away from his and Hinata's gaze and turned to look in the direction and saw the shaggy dark hair, long robes with the red fan on the back, and familiar red eyes of one Uchiha Itachi. Itachi-san, you came. He ran at the Uchiha teen and stopped right in front of him, as Itachi knelt down and started to mess with the blonde boy's hair. He had a genuine smile on his face too, which made Naruto brighten up more. The only person Itachi really cared about a great deal besides his younger brother was Naruto. The boy was a complete opposite to the stuck-ups of the great clans and was truly genuine with his feelings. Itachi actually wouldn't have minded to oversee Naruto's training if it weren't for the fact that he had so many family meetings to attend, and then the fact that he was a high-class superior level ANBU. So he was away and busy a lot of the time. But if he ever got the chance to come by and visit Naruto, he would. He pulled a double time in his most recent mission to make sure he made it back in time for Naruto's birthday, which meant a great deal to the boy. He reached inside his robe and pulled out a package and handed it to him, the dark red packaging giving an eerie look, but so tempting. He looked to his father, who gave the nod, and he began to open it. I realize how much you liked your gift last year, and so I did my best to get something that you would like for this year. What the wrapping covered was a small box. Upon opening it, there was a thick piece of parchment, but he quickly realized it was just because it was folded into many squares. Once he unfolded the paper, which ended up being quite big, he saw that it wasn't just any paper he was holding, but a scroll, and this scroll had many notes jostled down everywhere. Giving a look of minor confusion, he looked at Itachi, who smiled at him. That scroll, there's all of my notes from when I was younger. Follow those notes, as well as the guidelines set on it, and you should be able to learn to use somewhat simple techniques that upon mastering can be used in complex patterns and skills. I believe you will benefit the most from receiving this than my younger brother will. His statement about his younger brother had actually quelled a doubt that was brewing inside of him. He didn't want Itachi to give these to him, and not to his little brother, but if Itachi thought that Sasuke would be fine without them, then who was he to complain? Naruto rolled up the scroll and put it back in the box, beaming the whole time. The conversations and laughter continued, occasionally hushing every now and then as someone else handed Naruto a gift. New clothing, scrolls, shoes, a comfy jacket, a new set of kunai and shurikens, and some more furniture. It finally came down to those that mattered. Itachi had to leave after giving a quick briefing on his mission, wishing Naruto a happy birthday, and that was probably the last time he would see him in a month or so, maybe longer. He had yet to receive gifts from Sarutobi, Jiraiya, Hinata, well, the Hyugas in general, his mother, and he knew his father wasn't done. Sarutobi walked up to him and handed him a large package, which he opened up, revealing a pair of bracers. They were made of an exquisite design, the steel parts smooth and unbelievably fine, yet lightweight. It looked like it was worn like an elbow pad, but across the forearm, and he noticed that there are small holsters on the inside portion, which was explained were for kunai that could be accessed a lot more stealthily than for reaching for one out of a holster. Naruto smiled at the old man and received a hand messing with his hair again. I swear, what is so addictive about my hair? Next up came Jiraiya, who explained to the whole crowd that he had lost a bet with him, and therefore Jiraiya owed him a jutsu, a good one, which he emphasized. Therefore, my boy, my gift to you is teaching you the Kage Bunshin. A lot of mumbling went on with that announcement, and he felt himself becoming red with embarrassment. Was it his plan to try and impress everyone with the fact that I was going to be learning a jutsu, or was he trying to embarrass me? He quickly jerked to attention when Hayashi walked up to him. The man who seemed so cold before now seemed less stern. Could he actually be soft under that face? I was told by your father that you really haven't been given any assistance in Taijutsu. So here you go, young one. Naruto took the small package and unwrapped it, which was a book that was filled to the brim with taijutsu steps and procedures, stances and maneuvers, and styles that benefit the young, growing ninja. He smiled with gratitude towards Hayashi and bowed. receiving a bow from him as well. Naruto smiled also at Hinata and thanked her until Hayashi, who had gone back to her side, nudged her towards Naruto. She walked towards him with a small wrapped package in her hands, and Naruto realized that she had gotten him a separate gift. She handed it to him, and he unwrapped it, revealing an amber-colored jar with a dark substance inside. Naruto took the top off, being careful not to put too much strain on his hands. Getting the lid off, he was assaulted by the scent of peppermint, as he saw a dark green-colored gel was inside the jar. If I may ask, what is this stuff, Hinata-chan? If you would take off your bandages, I will show you. Naruto raised his eyebrows at her, but did so very reluctantly, and revealed his disfigured hands for all who could see to lose their lunch. Hinata again blanched at the sight, becoming an even paler color than she already was. She tentatively reached into the jar, putting some ointment on her fingers. Teach this might sting. Naruto can a lot. She finished seeing the degree of the damage. Naruto took the loose tape and put it in his mouth, biting down. She began to apply the stuff to Naruto, and he bit down hard, almost seeing stars. It burned a great deal, but slowly, too slowly for him, it began to calm, and the pain just seemed to be leaving. He felt so relieved when she was done moving her fingers across his hand, and felt himself blush when he sighed in relief. Some people giggled at the display, while others gave little ahwas. Naruto looked at his hand and saw that his skin just seemed to be regaining its normal color, and the pain no longer seemed to be there. He quickly unwrapped the other hand, and she put on the ointment on that hand too. When she was done, his hands felt so much better. He thanked her, she bowed to him, he bowed to her, and she walked back to her father. The next gift was from his mother, which included a great deal of blank scrolls, writing utensils, holsters, a bag to hold it all, and a neat little strap that went across his chest that seemed to hold everything to him. He thanked his mother with a kiss on the cheek, and his father came up behind him. Patting him on the shoulders, he turned to the crowd, smiling proudly. Well, everyone, I'd like to go ahead and announce that my boy has expressed a certain desire, and I have complied. He will, in 4 years, hopefully join Konoha's forces, as he will be attending the academy for the next 4 years. There was a moment that was given so people could clap until he turned to Naruto, and the clapping ceased. My son, that is not all I wish to give you. This is, for me, a very proud moment, and I'm happy for you, and with this great day, I wish to give you this. He handed him a scroll. What is the deal with the scrolls this year? And Naruto took it, opening it and seeing only one line on the parchment. That, my son, is the family's secret treasure. You, and only you, can read the contents. I'll explain the details later, but for now, let us move to the dining room for some tea and cake, why don't we? The bustling of people moving to the said room was quite noisy, but Naruto didn't care. Right now, he just wanted to find Hinata, the only person he could relate to and have a conversation with. He was ecstatic that he was going to be going to the ninja academy, and it was a bonus that she would be there as well, if he was correct. He found her and joined her by her side. They talked a little, her trying to explain the medicine she used on him, but he really didn't understand the full concept behind it. Just conversing about ordinary things, they didn't realize that they had ended up sitting next to each other at the massive table, with their fathers seated rather coincidentally across from them. They had an interesting conversation as well, the yondaime trying to convince Hayashi to send Hinata to the academy just a little bit early so that they could go together. The yondaime's theory was that they might help each other out. Hayashi, after a while of sitting there, watching his daughter smile at the boy and converse with him, began to believe him and decided that he agreed that it might be the best thing. He didn't want his daughter to become dependent on anybody, especially the boy, but it wouldn't hurt for them to start at the same time. Yondaime smiled, content, and continued to sip his tea and eat his slice of cake, being a complete sucker for the sweets. The guests started to file out around 4 p.m., which Naruto was very grateful of since his cheeks were sore from all the fake smiles he gave to the unwanted guests. As the unimportant ones left, Naruto was able to spend some time with just the people he wanted to spend time with. He actually got a visit by Hatake Kakashi, who seemed to have a complex with appearing on time. The tall man with spiky silver hair and the Hittite with the Konoha symbol on it covering his left eye and a mask covering his lower face gave the man a mysterious feel. What amused Naruto about Kakashi was that he always seemed to joke around and was playful, like a little kid, despite the fact that he was around 20 or so. Kakashi and Itachi were in the same caliber of ninja, both joining the ANBU at an outrageously young age and being extremely powerful as two of the most feared and revered of all the Konohinin. Kakashi gave the boy a card with a simple phrase on it. Times are tough. Life is hard. Here's your feckin' birthday card. Inside the card were 5 notes that stated that he could eat 3 bowls of ramen for free. For each note, at Ichiraku. He thanked Kakashi. Naruto guessed, smiled back, and went to the yondaime to discuss something. His father was talking with Sarutobi, Jiraiya, and Hayashi, and when Kakashi joined in, they huddled together, speaking in low voices, laughing about certain things, and taking sips of tea or sake, depending on who it was that was drinking what. Naruto looked around and saw Hinata talking with his mother, and he just stood there watching, smiling, not realizing that his mother noticed him. Naruto, dear, how about you take the young girl and show her around the house while I help attend to the dishes? His mouth dropped a little, his voice lost, wanting to protest, but sighed defeatedly and nodded, which was rewarded by her warm smile. He nodded his head at Hinata, who bowed slightly, causing him to groan, and walked over to her and continued out of the room. I told you don't have to be so formal with me, he muttered to her with just a little hint of agitation. Twists and turns, lefts and rights, and a lot of simple-minded explanations. He explained to her that the bedrooms were meant for his family, but most of them were traveling right now around Fire Country, so a lot of them were empty. There were 3 unassigned guest rooms and 11 occupied bedrooms, though only 3 were in use right now with him, his parents, and Jiraiya, who decided to stay with them since he agreed to oversee his training. Hinata was impressed with the simplicity, yet striking elegance of the house he lived in and was surprised when she saw his room. Naruto was a little uneasy with her going into his room, not because he didn't want people in there, but because his room might be offensive or unimpressive. But once she stepped in, she was in awe of all the decorative features in the room. The artwork on the walls, the specially made furniture, the woodwork that had gems made into it, and surprisingly, the bed. She actually ran up to it and jumped on it, bouncing a little to test its softness. Your room is a lot bigger than mine is, Naruto-kun. A lot nicer stuff, too. Naruto now felt guilty that he had shown her, afraid that it was offensive to her. Your bed is much bigger than mine, and you have all the art around your room. I'm jealous. My room isn't all that special. I mean, come on, you have to have much better stuff than this. Your family is much more well-known that you should have received a lot of nice things from allies of your father. Well, my father doesn't really approve of me having exotic material around. I think he's afraid I might dishonor him or something. She bit her lip as he saw her feet fidgeting. Well, I don't know your father all that much, but if he were afraid of anything, I'm assuming he would be afraid that you would become materialistic, but I don't know. My father doesn't really care since he knows I don't care about all this stuff too much. He saw her look a bit shocked that he would say that, and so he continued. All these gifts, Hinata, he said to her, motioning through his whole room, are from stuck-ups and stiffs that want nothing else than favors from my father. That's all they are, and I, for one, can't stand that. These aren't sincere gifts like your ointment. They are tokens given in a manner that will hopefully please my father and make him more accustomed to lending them some assistance, if required. I only keep it around so that I don't disappoint my mother. She's sweet and all, but she's dense if she thinks that these are all heartfelt gifts. I like the gifts that actually mean something, from people who are meaningful to me. Itachi, Sarutobi, Jiraiya, Kakashi, you, Mom, and Dad had the only gift that really meant anything to me. By the way, thanks again. She blushed and smiled warmly at the compliment that her gift had meant something special to him. Why, you're welcome. How does your hand feel? I wasn't sure if I did it right, but I had no way of testing it without an injury to test it on. It worked great, Hinata-chan. My hands hurt so badly, you couldn't imagine, but the pain is now almost completely gone. I only feel a tenderness where my skin hasn't regrown yet. Yet another blanched look from Hinata, but she still smiled at his compliment. So, I'm going to the Ninja Academy too, he said to her with a huge grin plastered on his face, proud that he would be getting the chance to become one of his village's finest. Hinata smiled and nodded her head in acknowledgement, secretly happy that he was to attend the academy. When are you starting? I guess when father tells me, so although he might make me wait till I'm 9 as well. When is your birthday, Hinata-chan? December the 27th, WY. Oh, no reason. It's just you knew when mine was, so I figure I should know when yours was. Hey, want to see my favorite part of the house? She nodded, and he took her hand, guiding her through the hallways and ended at a section of the house that opened up into the meditation garden. She smiled and breathed in deep, taking in the luscious feel of the area. There were semi-tall trees and bushes, and the grass was neat and trim, yet very lush. There were flowers of an assortment of colors, ranging from yellow to white, to red, to purple, to blue, and to green. In the middle was a fountain with a small pond, and she ran up to the water, putting her fingertips into the water to test its temperature. "This is nice. It's just like ours at the house," she said as she walked over to the different colored flowers, sniffing each one and releasing a satisfied sigh as each one smelled wonderful. Naruto just chuckled at her enthusiasm for such a simple thing as flower scents, peace, and tranquility. "Yeah, this is the only place that is usually quiet enough for me to meditate without being disturbed. If my mind is ever cloudy, I just come here, sit down, and look up at the sky." His face held a sort of calmness as he recalled all the times he would come here when he was younger and just get to be to himself. He uncowingly had sat down and started to look up at the sky and let the tranquil nature of this place exuded wash over him. Hinata had come a bit closer to him and started to do the same thing, looking at the sky, curling her knees up into her chest, and continuing to breathe in the atmosphere of the place. Unknown to the kids, their father figures had found them and chuckled silently at the sight. Naruto, who felt their presence, instantly became annoyed that his father was finding amusement from him enjoying his birthday. "You know, you're not as stealthy as you would like to think you are, Dad," he told him, shifting his weight so that he could look behind him without putting too much strain on his neck. He noticed Hinata had stood up, brushing grass remnants from her clothing, and he was slightly annoyed more that their appearance had actually ruined his time with her. The short time he had come to know her, he thought of her as his friend, possibly his first. Itachi, who was young and somewhat close to him in age, acted more like a brother would than a friend. Naruto stood up as well, looking at his and Hinata's fathers, especially Hayashi, since he seemed to be trying to take into account something that wasn't physically tangible and make an accurate judgment, whatever it may be. Hinata shifted uncomfortably under his gaze and started to dig her bare toes in the grass. Her sandals probably were in his room when she discarded them, so she could jump on his bed without being disrespectful to his furniture. It was then that Hayashi cleared his throat and looked at the man next to him, who returned the gaze and was received by a nod from Hayashi, which made him smile back at Hayashi, and then to the youngsters, who had a mixed reaction to it, but both being out of uncomfort. Hinata lowered her head, blushing slightly at such a strong smile being directed from the leader of the village. Naruto, however, slumped in his posture, breathing out a deep sigh of exasperation for his father's stupid and overdone mannerisms. It was Hayashi's voice that broke both the kids from their trance, making them jump slightly. "Ahem, I think this will be all for today. I must get back to the manor and do some of the paperwork. Naruto-san, I wish you a farewell and hope that your birthday was enjoyable. Come, Hinata." "Hi, Otis-san," she said as she walked to her father, but then noticed that she was missing her footwear as the grass continued to tickle her feet. "Oh, I left my sandals in Naruto's room," she said to her father. "I will go get them if you will wait for me a moment." "Let my boy escort you then. The house can be a maze if you don't live here." "Naruto, would you dash?" Yeah, I will. Come on, Hinata-chan," he said, cutting off his father, who just smiled back at him and watched as he and Hinata left to retrieve her shoes. "You seem unusually happy today, Hokage-sama. Something else is here than meets the eye. Would you care to enlighten me?" Hayashi asked him, wondering what he could be so thrilled with. It was true it was his son's birthday, and it wasn't unnatural for the yondaime to be hyper or happy, but it seemed to be different today. "I'm just happy that my boy has found a child his age who can be his first true friend. The only other person he ever addresses with an informal suffix added to it is Uchiha Itachi, who has taken a certain fondness of him. Your daughter is the first person his age who he has met and addresses on such a friendly level. I feel them being in the academy at the same time is going to help out with both of them. They will probably push each other to be better and defeat each other's weaknesses. Don't you think so? You seem to have faith in not just your boy's ability, but my daughter's, and you do not much of her progression. I have not been able to train with my boy and help him as much as I have wanted to, but Jiraiya has been doing well with him. He reports that Naruto has a certain knack for some things, like chakra control. He told Hayashi, who responded with a raised eyebrow, wondering what the level might be and if it was close to the branch family's prodigy. And I'm sure that your daughter has a great deal of talent and ability that just needs a little bit of time to surface. Time, Hayashi spoke as his word were laced with disappointment, is a luxury the elders won't give so easily. They have heard that my youngest daughter, Hanabi, seems to show more promise than Hinata has and are pushing for me to make a decision on which one would make a better heir apparent. It is Hinata's right to be the leader when she is grown, but if the elders of the clan do not respect her then, I just did not want her to go through the same things her mother did. His face had become saddened as he recalled what had happened to his beautiful wife, the horrible way she was treated by the family, and he did not want any of their children to go through the torment that she must have gone through. If only there was a way that I could break through that layer of inferiority that has become established within her psyche, then she might be able to make some serious progress with her training. That is the very reason you should let her go to the academy with my boy. He has a certain feel about him that just seems to grab at people and change them for the better. Itachi was a cold loner, diligently doing his missions and returning to his family to train or do family business. Now, he frequents our house when he manages the time between his duties and treats Naruto as if he were his little brother as well. My sensei, Jiraiya, had no desire to have any more apprentices after me, but he warmed up to Naruto and decided to oversee his training from when he was young. Your daughter seems to have had the same effect on my boy, and I think that he will have a positive effect on her. As he said this, Hayashi thought about all the words the Yondaime had said, continuing to let it stew in his mind, wondering if it was a good thing to let the Hokage's son partner with the heir of the Hyugas. But it did sound like it might be the best thing. The Ninja Academy would allow her to get out and see how other ninjas work and train, and maybe let that shield of hers be broken away as others her age surrounded the young girl. He closed his eyes as he pondered the possibilities and then opened them, coming to a conclusion. It was at this moment that Naruto and Hinata had returned, both giggling as Naruto had finished telling Hinata about how he got back Jiraiya the other day for all the times the old man had woken him up with water on the head. They saw their fathers still conversing, although it looked like Hayashi was deep in thought. The men turned to see their children looking, and Hayashi had something unexpected on his face, a warm smile. "Oh, Tasan, I'm ready," she said as she was taken aback by the sudden appearance of warmth across her father's usually stern and cold face. "As am I. But before we leave, I wish to ask a favor of you, Naruto." Naruto looked at the man, as he was also taken aback by Hinata's father. Not for the smile on his face, though it didn't seem to settle right on the man's face. After seeing the man with such an unflinchingly cold face, a smile just seemed to be out of place, like a luscious apple tree in a barren desert. But it was the fact that the man wanted to ask him of a favor. Yes, sir. I have been informed that you will start attending the academy by the beginning of next week by your father. If you would you be willing to come to our manor on that same morning?" I guess I could, but why would you want that?" Now his interest was piqued. If what Hayashi was getting at was what Naruto thought it was, then he was going to be ecstatic. "It is just that I would like for my daughter to have a familiar person with her on her first day, so that she won't be so nervous. I think you being there will help her to not be so apprehensive on her first day at the academy." "So would you?" Naruto's grin exploded all over his face, and he couldn't contain himself. He would be going to the academy. He found that out at the beginning of his day. And now, seemingly at the end of his special day, he found out that he would be attending with his new friend. He was overjoyed that this day went so well. Hayashi was amused by the boy's reaction and by his daughter's too. It looked as though she were happy that she would be going to the academy with Naruto, and when Naruto grabbed her hands and started to jump excitedly, trying to get her to join him, he chuckled at the sight, feeling that he had made the smartest decision in his life. After he finally calmed down, releasing Hinata, who was blushing from the display she had just seen and shown, she had joined in with him a few seconds after he started, his energy being contagious after all, and looked to her father to see if he disapproved. On the contrary, he was smiling still, but the Yondaime had his right up to his chin, rubbing it while looking at her, and Naruto chuckling slightly. Naruto had put his hand behind his head, scratching it, with a blush of his own across his face that he had acted like such a child in front of his father and Hinata's father. I thought that that would make my daughter happy. If I knew it would make you so happy, Naruto, then I would have done that as my gift, he said as he chuckled lightly at his own joke. So, I am to take your response as a yes? Naruto nodded, still embarrassed for the way he acted. After that, Hinata, his father, and her father made their way to the front of the house, discussing the small arrangements that were already made for an escort for the both of them. They decided on a woman by the name of Yuhi Kurenai, who had agreed to be Hinata's escort when she was younger. They needed to be at the academy by 8 a.m. exactly, which would mean Naruto would have to wake up earlier now. He didn't mind right now, but he figured it would eventually become a nuisance. When they reached the front door, Hayashi and Hinata bid their farewells, wishing him another happy birthday before they walked out of the house and back to their homes. Naruto, after seeing the door close, making sure that they might not hear them, pumped his fist into the air, shouting, "Waitite." His voice rung out from that area throughout the entire building, it seemed, but only got smiles from the remaining visitors, who were Kakashi, Jiraiya, who didn't count as a guest, and Sarutobi. The rest of the evening was spent with him putting all his stuff into places in his room, not really worrying where or how this was placed there. The only things he really kept around were all the scrolls and books, as well as Hinata's medicine, which was put on the bedside table where his annoying-ass alarm clock sat. He realized now that he would need that damn thing more than ever to avoid being woken up by his father or Jiraiya. The next few days were like a blur, moving so fast as he attempted to learn the jutsu Jiraiya promised to teach him, which happened to be a Jounin-level technique called Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. One-hand seal, but damn, it was hard to do this jutsu, for it required not the expert use of the hand seals, but a much larger amount of chakra than what Naruto was used to using. Plus, it had something to do with how the user visualized the results. Apparently, you needed to tell yourself how many bunshins you wanted to make, and then look into your chakra stores and split accordingly. The difficulty with this was he just didn't know how to do something that complex yet. He was told by Jiraiya that it would probably take him about a year, maybe a little more or possibly a little less, to learn how to do this. It might take until he was through with the 4 years in the academy before he finally got the hang of using the technique to anywhere close to its full potential. Patience was the key, and Naruto just seemed to lack that when he couldn't do something in the amount of time he wanted. The big day was fast approaching, and he was getting more and more anxious about his first day at the academy. His bags were packed, pouches filled accordingly with a number of kunai and shukens, and blank parchments and scrolls filled into the pockets of his backpack for the academy. Tomorrow is the day I take the next step towards my goal. Chapter 3, The Academy. Beep, 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 beep. Ugh, that damn noise, the bane of my existence. With a loud smack, Naruto punched his alarm clock, effectively hitting all the buttons and by coincidence turning off the alarm. Sitting up in his bed, he breathed in the morning air as it flew into his room from the window on the far side of his room. Naruto could feel the autumn winds, and it sent shivers down him, but he shrugged it off, not wanting to be late. Naruto needed to be out of the house and be at the Hyuga Manor by 7:30 a.m., and it was already 7 o'clock even. Kicking out his legs over the side of the bed, he slipped his feet into his warm morning slippers, grabbing a change of clothes and making his way to the shower room down the hall. He turned on the water to let it get warm as he undid the bandages on his hand. They were still sore from his attempting of the technique Jiraiya taught him before his birthday, and he had still been practicing it even while trying to learn the Kage Bunshin. His father's advice on not using so much chakra helped reduce the negative results, but with the increase of the spin's velocity, it still ended up burning his palms. He went back to his room while the water was still running and grabbed the medicinal salve from his nightstand. He opened the jar and stuck in a couple fingers at a time, applying it to one hand at a time, and carefully rubbed it into his raw hands. After doing that, he resealed the jar, placed it back on the nightstand, and went back to the shower room, and, taking off the rest of his clothes, took a quick shower. After getting out of the water, the cool air attacking his skin and making the moisture that remained on him feel like it was frozen to him. He was thankful that the medicinal cream worked as fast as it did, for he was very sure the water in the shower, no matter what temperature, would have made him see stars. And despite the fact that he did clean his wounded hands, They still smelled of the peppermint in the cream. Shaking himself out of his thoughts, he quickly dressed himself in a plain black t-shirt and orange windbreaker pants with black stripes going down the outer sides of the legs. He wore black shoes / boots that he tightened to him with the laces on his shins. After putting on his windbreaker jacket, which was also orange with black stripes and lines around the edges of the sleeves and body and red counterclockwise rotational designs on his shoulders and on the back, he grabbed his backpack and put it on, making the contents rattle around inside. He made his way to the kitchen, which had a familiar odor radiating from it. The heavenly scent could only be coming from one thing: the instant ramen cups he had fallen in love with for the easy, on-the-go meal. "Well, good morning, my son. Are you already prepared to leave for the academy?" His mother's voice was light and dainty, nothing like his father's obnoxious vocals that echoed across the entire house. Once again dressed in a morning robe, her hair hanging down to her mid-back and her face held a warmth in it that never seemed to dissipate, no matter the circumstances. How could she be so happy this early in the morning? It's unnatural. His mother walked to the table with two rather large cups that looked like they were made for sipping herbal teas and broths, but instead were filled with ramen noodles and the boiled water to make the broth. He reached for the chopsticks on the table, held in a little wooden cup, broke them apart, chanted the ceremonial itadakimasu, and dove into the ramen noodles. His extravagant eating habits would probably be considered a world-class sin if he were in any of the other noble families. Bring shame to their ancestors with the horrendous slurping noises he made as he hungrily swallowed his first whole cup of ramen in a span of 2 minutes. The next cup was gone in a slightly longer time frame, 2.5 minutes. He smiled contently at his mother, said his goodbye to her, and made his way to the front door to leave, when a yellow blur appeared in front of him. "And just where do you think you are going in such a hurry?" There was a thin line between teasing and annoying when it came to Naruto's father, and right now, while his father would think he was teasing him, Naruto thought that his father was being annoying. "You know damn well where I'm going. I need to go to the academy, all right?" His father didn't move or didn't show any sign that he acknowledged what had been said. "Yes, I recall me saying you could go today. The thing is, I thought it came with a stipulation. If I'm correct, you were supposed to do something before going to the academy. Am I right, or have you forgotten?" Naruto now understood. His father was making sure he didn't forget to go to the Hyuga's house, first to be accompanied by that Kurenai lady and Hinata. Yes, I know, but I won't make it in time if you don't move your ass, father. Such language is unfitting from you, my boy, especially since those words may fall upon such innocent ears as your new friend, Hinata. Be respectful of your manners and be respectful of those around you. Your teacher is your sensei from now on, understand? Do everything he says, no matter what, and behave. Now go on, Naruto, before you are late. With that, he ruffled his son's hair and walked away out of the greeting area and made his way towards the kitchen where his wife Shirley was. "I'm proud of you, Naruto. Now go and become stronger." Naruto ran as fast as he could, pumping chakra into his legs to assist in his progress. His house was somewhat close to the Hyuga's mansion, but he wasn't fast like the adults were, so it still took a bit of time to get there. As he approached the entrance, he saw a lady with long, wavy hair and red eyes making her way into the complex. She might be the escort since her eyes aren't that of the Hyuga clan. I wonder if she is related to Itachi by any chance? When he reached the main gate, the guards looked at him questioningly until the person who they just let in turned around, hearing the guards ask someone their business. When she saw that it was a young blonde boy with a backpack on and ragged blonde hair, she knew who it was. "Don't worry, guys. He was told to meet me and Hinata-sama here. I am his escort too. If you need a check, you can go get Hayashi, but he'd be mad at you for not letting Uzumaki Naruto in here to begin with." They instantly tensed upon hearing the boy's name, being given instructions to allow him in when he arrived. They opened the gates, and he walked in a little apprehensively at first, shuffling uncomfortably towards the escort. "Thanks, those guys' eyes always creep me out, and I just couldn't say anything. Are you Yuhi Kurenai?" She turned to him and nodded with a smile on her face that was very sweet and welcoming. If you don't mind me asking, your eyes are red, I noticed. Are you related to Itachi-san in any way?" Kurenai thought she was going to fall flat on her face when she heard that question. She instead laughed wholeheartedly, amused by the boy's innocent question. "No, Naruto, I'm not related to him. My eyes are like this because they run in my family. Naruto gave her a curious glance and quickly took in her appearance. She appeared to be quite young, he thought, since her skin showed no signs of age whatsoever. Her cheeks held a rosy hue to them, and her hair was long, going down to her mid-back, and was black. Her shirt was sleeveless with straps that came over her shoulders and tucked in her skirt, which came to about mid-thigh on her long legs. She was taller than him, obviously, since the top of his head came to her to the middle of her upper body. They walked through the compound and came upon a bench in the clearing. She motioned for him to sit there and wait while she went and retrieved Hinata and spoke very quickly with Hinata's father. He nodded, sat down, and looked up at the sky. After a few moments of waiting, he heard footsteps approaching him and thought it was them returning. About time, we might be late if... But he stopped when he saw who was actually there. A boy who looked to be roughly around the same age as him, but had the white eyes of the Hyugas. What was more unnerving about him was the scowl that seemed to be etched on his face. "What are you doing on our premises?" His voice was laced with malice, and Naruto wondered if this boy had some sort of problem with him. Another thing Naruto noticed was that it wasn't a question the boy had asked. It was a demand. "I was invited to be here. I'm waiting on my and Hinata's escort to come back with Hinata so that we can go to the academy. So I will ask you to back away before I make you do so." With that, the boy's face went from anger to amusement as he put on a smug smirk and looked at him. "You are the son of the Hokage, aren't you?" Once again, not a question, but an observation. Fine. I can afford to be late." He then took off his backpack and tossed it to the side, stepped back a few paces, and got into a fighting stance. "Come on. You'll be a great morning warm-up." Naruto had had it with the smug attitude. This guy is just itching to get his ass kicked, isn't he? Fine, you asked for it. Just remember, you initiated the confrontation. So don't go crying to Hayashi-sama when I defeat you. Naruto took his backpack off and set it on the ground and got into his own stance. The boy in front of him tightened up his form and was probably about to come after him when a sudden gasp came from the main house of the compound. Naruto's opponent calmed down and loosened up his stance and chuckled smugly. "Be thankful for my cousin's interruption. If not for her, you would be dead." The last words rang through his mind as he noticed Hinata staring at him and this boy, who said he was her cousin. He shuddered as the last 4 words continued to ring through his head. Why do I feel that? He would have been right. The boy walked to pick back up his bag, threw a spiteful look at Naruto, and ran towards the gate, jumping over it instead of waiting for the guards to open it. Naruto now looked toward Hinata to see her jogging over to him while looking worried. "Naruto, are you okay? Why were you and my brother about to fight?" "Brother?" He said you were his cousin. He was confused and wasn't trying to hide it. Did I miss something here, or did my brain just decide to hear something else? "He is my cousin, but I think of him as a brother, and so," she said softly, trailing off at the end. "Okay. I'm surprised he's related to you in any way. He looks a lot more aggressive than you do. He seems mean as hell." Hinata giggled at his words. "He is a little bitter sometimes. Why were you two about to fight each other?" Naruto then told her everything real quickly and finished precisely as Kurenai approached them. Hinata was horrified by the fact that her brother, who Naruto had learned was Neji, had told Naruto he would have died if they fought each other. "Is he that strong, Hinata?" "Neji and Ai-san is very strong, Naruto-kun, despite his age. He's considered the clan's prodigy." Naruto gulped audibly as a bead of sweat came down his face. Kurenai patted him on the shoulders to get his attention and told them they had only 8 minutes to make it to the academy on time. They were going to have to hustle to make it, and she thought that that would be uncouth of her to do that to them. Asking them to gather around her, she performed a few quick hand seals, and everything seemed to twist around them. One minute they were at the Hyuga compound, and the next minute they were in front of a rather large-looking building, with many kids gathered all around, talking to each other and laughing. A number of them stopped whatever it was they were doing and looked at them. Naruto found himself to be rather uncomfortable under their gaze. He wondered if Hinata was as uncomfortable as he was. By the way she was poking her fingers together, then yes, she was. Kurenai cleared her throat to get both of her attendants to focus, and she walked towards the doors of the building, Naruto and Hinata following closely behind her. He heard whispers come from the other young kids around him, some snickering, others looking at them and trying to judge them. He and Hinata weren't just some pieces of meat to be viewed and judged as inferior or superior. He swore he heard some of the kids mumble something about Hyuga heir and blonde-haired boy, and he just couldn't wait for the inevitable introduction. If they felt that they had stuff to gossip about now, just wait till that glorious moment when they could be seen as who they actually were. Kurenai giggled at the reaction of Hinata and Naruto to the gazes of their fellow classmates. If they think this is bad, then they haven't seen anything yet. They continued to walk down a large hall with lockers along the walls. The premises of the academy appeared to be huge, but the building wasn't all that large, being only one floor and with a few doors that probably led into classrooms. Kurenai stopped at one of the doors, knocking on it and moving her hand to the doorknob to await opening it. When they heard someone from the inside say, "Come in," she opened the door and led Naruto and Hinata into the room. It was rather large, much bigger than Naruto's room, and was quite spacious despite the numerous desks. On one side was a large board, probably for writing notes and the such, with a desk that looked much the same as his father's desk in Hokage's tower. It had a small desk lamp, numerous papers, a few folders, a notepad, and a tray for holding pencils and pens, all strewn across the desk in an orderly manner. Seated behind this desk was a man with a cross-shaped scar on his face, with dark skin complexion, a Konoha headband, what looked to be a dark shirt of some kind with a heavy-looking green vest over it, which Naruto noticed was the vest awarded to Chunins. The man's hair was also dark, probably black, but Naruto didn't pay that much attention to that little detail. He was more interested in the fact that the man wasn't even looking at them and was, instead, scribbling something down on the notepad. When he finally finished, he put the pencil down enthusiastically, breathed out finally out of satisfaction, and then looked at them while smiling. "I'm sorry about that. I was just finishing up some quick notes on today's curriculum. So, you must be Yuhi Kurenai, which means these young ones are the new students I was told I would be teaching." Hyuga Hinata, she nodded at him with a faint blush appearing on her cheeks, and Uzumaki Naruto, which earned him a slight nod from the boy. "My name is Yumino Irika, and I will be your teacher for your duration in the academy. I must say that I am rather happy that your fathers decided to put you into the academy at this point. You can now join my most recent class and not be too far behind the rest of the students. The students will be coming into the building any moment now and going to their seats, so, if you would, just stay here by my desk until they fill in completely. Then I will ask you to introduce yourselves to the others. Nothing spectacular, just a simple introduction, and then we will begin." He smiled at them, but they did not return it. Naruto's early premonition was correct, and he hated it when he was right. He saw out of the corner of his eyes that Hinata looked to be mortified. Her head was lowered so that she appeared to be looking at the ground, and she was fidgeting with her clothing. He hadn't taken the time to really pay attention to it, probably since it seemed so plain on her. A tannish-brown colored jacket covering her entire upper body and baggy dark pants with ordinary sandals. It was as though she were trying to look as unimportant as possible. Naruto thought to himself that it might have worked if it weren't for her eyes. His concentration was broken by Kurenai, who patted them on the shoulders, startling the poor girl, and telling them she would see them tomorrow. "Have fun, kids," she spoke in a mocking voice, with a hint of amusement as she disappeared in a burst of red petals. It left an oddly soothing scent of fragrant flowers in the aftermath. They were then interrupted once again by kids entering the classroom, some not paying any attention to them, some giving them odd glances and looks as they all went to the previously unoccupied desks on the other side of the room. There were 5 rows, each with around 8 desks, and all 40 or so desks seemed to fill up with the exception of 2, which were probably added to the row at the front just for them. Irika, their teacher, stood up while clearing his throat. The commotion from the talking and laughing ceased shortly after, and they all paid attention to him. "Good morning, class," and the students responded in unison, "Ohayo, Sensei," which surprised Naruto and made Hinata jump slightly. "We have 2 new students joining us today." He then looked at them and said in a slightly lower voice, "Go ahead, you two." Naruto grumbled and stepped forward a little bit, gazing around the class. Some of them were already whispering and snickering as they pointed fingers at him or Hinata. Hey, hello, my name is Uzumaki Naruto," and the commotion built up again. Some didn't react until others whispered into their ears, probably telling them that he was the Hokage's son. His father's last name was not a very well-known thing, since everyone seemed to just refer to him as Hokage or Yandame. Naruto never said his name properly like that, and always called him dad or father. Even his mother called him dear or honey. Irika punched the desk and shouted at the class to be respectful of their fellow classmates and not interrupt their introduction. He motioned for Naruto to continue. What? You want me to give him a biography of my life or something? He asked him in a lower voice, spilling with sarcasm. Just tell them a little bit about you, that's all. Just a little. Naruto groaned, but complied. Yes, if you haven't figured it out yet, I am the Hokage's son, but I'm going to go ahead and ask that nobody, please, treat me any differently you would anyone else here. I enjoy ramen, love to train and spar, and meditate in peaceful surroundings. You're up, Hinata, he said to the girl, nudging her in the side, making her jump slightly again, and walking to a seat at the front of the class. More whispers and some giggling came from the kids as he took his seat and looked upon Hinata as she struggled to speak to the class. Hello, my name is Hyuga Hinata. I like to see those around me happy and dislike meaningless confrontations, but she just sort of cut herself off and shuffled to take the seat next to him. He smiled at her, hoping to perk her up, but she just continued to look out of it. Iriko walked up to them, handing both of them thick textbook and gave everyone orders to turn to page 37 in the book, where they learned about the benefits of meditation and how it can amplify the effectiveness of a shinobi in certain situations. After an hour of that, he called for them to exit the room via the doors at the back of the rooms at the top of the stairs. They walked into an open area filled with logs that had targets painted on them or had training mats put on them for practicing striking. He told them to just choose a spot on the ground, but give each other enough space so that no one is bumping against one another or feeling uncomfortable. Naruto took a spot on the grass close to a boy with big hair, a plain white shirt, a brown jacket that was unzipped, and brown pants. Naruto noticed that Hinata had come by as well and joined him. I admit she's cool and all, and I consider her one of my friends, but that doesn't mean I want to be joined to her at the hip. Is she really that uncomfortable around others that she needs me for familiarity? She took a seat, sitting in Indian style, as was everyone else, including him, and all awaited instructions. All right, everyone, we're going to practice meditation. I want you all to envision a comfortable place in your mind. Close your eyes and think you are in that very place. Once you are there, I want you to concentrate and tell yourself that you will improve today. Okay, good. Now open your eyes. Everyone did and looked around, some slightly amused at the fact that they were doing meditation, others just bored. Okay then, everyone find a partner. We're going to be practicing Taijutsu. Naruto knew who he was going to pair up with, not because he didn't want to upset her, but because he was interested to see how good Hinata was. She looked like she might be a little fragile when she wore her kimonos, but with this simple attire on her, she looked like she was a fighter, even though she did have those nervous habits of hers. You want to partner up, Hinata? She looked at him innocently, and Naruto didn't know whether or not he could possibly spar with her at full power. He'd feel like a bully. Okay, Naruto-kun. She was slightly happy that she didn't have to ask him, because she didn't want to ask anyone else that she didn't know. She was now very thankful her father asked for Naruto to accompany her on their first day. She would have been mortified if she didn't know him or anyone else at the academy. Irika, after seeing that everyone had a partner, not at all surprised to see Naruto and Hinata paired up, assigned each group to a log and let them work on their taijutsu basics with either the training logs or each other. Naruto could see that all the other kids were performing simple moves. Quick palm thrusts or punches, sweeps and mid-body kicks, and palm-handed blocks. He and Hinata did the same things, just simple taijutsu, but gradually increased the speed and force. Iriko watched them carefully and noted that they both seemed to have benefited from their family's training methods. After another hour of this, he told them to practice their aiming for when they throw kunais and shurikens. Naruto's aim wasn't bad, but it wasn't all that great either. Same went for Hinata, but she did better than he did. Naruto saw that everyone seemed to be paying a bit more attention to a boy with black hair, a blue shirt with a red fan on the back, and whitish khaki shorts. His accuracy was a lot better than anyone else's, hitting inside of the target zone every time. He never hit a bullseye, but he came close a couple of times. Naruto recognized the design on the back of the shirt as belonging to the Uchihas and put two and two together. He must be Itachi's little brother, Sasuke. After a while of doing this, Iruka called for lunch and told them all to be back in class in an hour exactly. Naruto took this chance to find out some things. He figured the boy he had sat close to when meditating would do fine. He expected Hinata to follow him, but she was instead stopped by a thin girl with long blonde hair and calm blue eyes. Naruto figured that hanging around with the other students and not hanging around with him all the time would do her some good to overcome her nervousness. He felt bad for the girl during her introduction. She seemed so horrified about introducing herself. He hoped that she will be able to defeat that weakness of hers, since it is not a rather good trait with the shinobi lifestyle. As he followed the kids to the lunch area, he saw them all eating lunches that they had brought and cursed himself for not asking about that himself. Now, he was in a starve for the next few hours or so until he could go home and devour the rest of the instant ramen supply. Naruto shrugged off the fact he had no lunch and instead hunted down that boy he had targeted. He saw him sitting underneath a tree, munching on a rice ball and staring up at the sky. Walking over to the boy, he got a couple more odd looks and snickers and was becoming more and more perturbed by the behavior of his fellow peers. "Hey there, mind if I join you?" he asked the boy. The said boy peered at him with one eye, giving him a quick look over. "Sure, if you want. I don't really care," the boy answered lazily. His voice was very dull and boring. Naruto accepted the half-hearted reply and sat down in the tree's shade. "So what's your name?" "Ugh. Introductions are so troublesome. Nara Shikamaru. Just call me Shikamaru, all right?" Naruto couldn't help but find how agitated Shikamaru was to be humorous. Introductions are so troublesome? I think I like this guy already. "So, you just started too? You look like, despite your lackadaisical manner, to be rather experienced, and so I was just hoping you might be able to help me out with a couple of things." "You know, kid, that's what instructors are for, right?" Naruto chuckled at his response again. "Yeah, I know that, but now I'm having fun agitating you. The name's Naruto, by the way. I'm guessing you were the one who was snoring in the classroom, right?" Shikamaru smiled at that, amused by how astute Naruto was. "Class can just be boring sometimes, and sleep is a more acceptable waste of my time than book study. To answer your first question, yes, I recently started, as did everyone else. If you want to know anything else, ask somebody besides him," finished a chubby little boy who walked from behind the tree. "Right, Shikamaru?" "Hey there, Chuji. Naruto, this is probably my only friend, Chuji." "Akamichi, Chuji." Chuji looked from Shikamaru to the other boy, who must be Naruto, and gave him a friendly smile. "Nice to meet you, Naruto." "Yeah, same here. Chuji, right?" The boy nodded. "And you are Shikamaru," he said, looking back at Shikamaru, who gave him a weird look. "Good. I'll probably be able to remember that." It was just then that the boy he had thought of to be Itachi's younger brother, Sasuke, came stalking by, followed closely by a number of young girls giving him googly eyes. Naruto recognized that the blonde-haired girl was in the crowd and wondered what happened to Hinata. As if on cue, she walked into the tree's shade and sat down next to Naruto, hugging her knees, not looking as nervous as she had. "Hey, Hinata, these are some guys I just became acquainted with. Narashiko," who he pointed to the lazy boy laying on his back, and Akamichi Chuji. Chuji smiled at her and waved his hand in a dismissive manner. "You can just call me Chuji if you like." Shikamaru grunted at that. "Likewise, just call me Shikamaru." He then gave an annoyed look at Naruto before continuing. "You know, you're becoming troublesome with all these introductions." Hinata giggled at him. "So, Hinata, who was that girl you became acquainted with?" "Her name is Yamanaka Ino. She's nice and said her family owns a flower shop in town and said I'm welcome to drop by if I want," she said enthusiastically. Naruto only guessed that Hinata loved flowers. "Cool. Do you happen to know why all those people were chasing that boy there?" "I think he's Sasuke, but I'm not sure," he asked her, who only shook her head to signify she didn't. Shikamaru grunted again, probably his way of alerting people that he was about to talk. "Yeah, he's Sasuke. Lots of things are expected out of him. The talk is that he is supposed to have a good bit of talent, not as much as his brother, of course. As for the girls, well, I don't understand women all that well, so I don't know. I guess they find him attractive, but I wouldn't really know. Those things are just too troublesome to even consider this early in my life." Naruto almost doubled over in laughter at Shikamaru's words. Chuji joined in at laughing at his friend's expense. As they sat there, amused by each other, Naruto's stomach made a beastly groan as its hunger was announced to all around him. Chuji, consequently, laughed at Naruto and the embarrassed look plastered on his face. Hinata, however, felt bad for Naruto for not having anything to eat, something she didn't notice before they split up for lunch. The irony of this was that the lunch that she had brought for herself was more than she could eat and could share with him. Naruto-kun, if you want, you can have some of my lunch, she said to him as she scooted a package wrapped in a large towel towards him, her eyes averted towards her right foot. You sure, Hinata? He asked politely, resisting the urge, with great difficulty, to just take the food without proper consideration. When she responded with a quiet, he unwrapped the package, undoing the snap on the quaint lunchbox and opening the top of it to see a few rice balls, a couple celery sticks, and some noodles. The noodles were apparently cooked in a buttery lemon sauce, from what Hinata told him after he asked, and the rest of the food tasted just like it looked. Naruto wasn't a big fan of celery, but beggars couldn't be choosers in these situations. After he finished that, he thanked Hinata, who responded in her quiet voice. You're welcome, Naruto-kun. Shikamaru had finished his rice ball and was chewing on some bacon strips, still looking up at the clouds. Chuji was eating yet another bag of chips with no regard for how the consequences of such actions might have on him in the future. A few minutes after Naruto had finished Hinata's lunch, a whistle was blown by Irika, signaling everyone to return to the classroom for more bookwork. When the day finally ended, they received an assignment for homework for when they returned to school in a couple of days. Naruto stayed behind to speak with Irika about how things were going to end up working out. Apparently, the academy's term for the students included an 8 to 9 month curriculum for 4 years in all. The months that you didn't attend were the students' break from the school. Naruto's father, with the assistance of the elders, had the ninja academy changed to resemble more of a regular school for those who did not aspire to be ninjas. The first-year students are to attend the academy 2 to 3 days a week since they did not want to overload students early. The second year for students was a 3 to 4 day a week schedule and more of a workload. The third-year students and the fourth-year students both attended the academy for 5 days a week with increasing workloads. Each year, the students would be given a test based on what the teacher for the class thinks would best test the instructor's students. The test for the first-year class, Naruto was reassured by Irika, wouldn't be terribly difficult, but as each year goes by, the more demanding the finals would become, until the last year where the students, no matter what, would have to perform a genin rank jutsu. Naruto thought how amusing it was that he was trying to master a technique that Jiraiya told him was a jounin rank jutsu. After getting all of the complexities that clouded his mind about the school cleared out, he said his goodbye to Irika and went to go catch up with Hinata, who was waiting for him with Kurenai. So, Naruto-san, what did you and Irika talk about? Kurenai asked him with a curious look. Just asked him some things about the academy and how things were run. He reassured me on some of my earlier doubts. He responded, giving a satisfied smile to her and Hinata. That's good. Now, can we get you two home? I'm pretty sure you are all tired from your first day, and to be honest, I'm hungry. Naruto laughed at Kurenai while Hinata giggled quietly, as always. After they reached his house, he said goodbye to Kurenai and Hinata, smiling as he did so. Naruto also reassured them that he would be there earlier tomorrow for their pickup time when Kurenai gave him another curious gaze. Naruto, you don't have to do that every day. I was to assume that it would be a one-time thing since you didn't know where the academy was. Naruto gave a slight pout, which resulted in a giggle from the woman who decided to let him come along. But if you want to, then you can meet with us. I have no problems with it. Tomorrow, I don't want to be in such a rush like we had to this morning. So be early. Yes, ma'am. See you tomorrow, Hinata-chan. Bye, Kurenai-san. And Naruto went into his house, where he had to go through the troublesome process of telling his mom, dad, and Jiraiya about his day and what it would be like for the next 4 years. After dinner, he went to the garden to meditate and practice his targeting for an hour before he tackled the chakra swirling exercise. He told himself that he would spend the whole of tomorrow on his homework and exercises. The academy was definitely what he needed, he thought to himself as he crawled into bed. The change in his routine was definitely welcome and breath of new life for him. New people, new activities, new customs, and different routines. Every day he would be there. He fell asleep, excited about the prospect of becoming a true shinobi of his village, excited over the thought that in 4 years he might be one step closer to his goal. Chapter 4, Genin Exam. A day of reminiscing and opportunity. Beep, 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 beep. Smash. With an ear-piercing crash, the bane of Naruto's existence ceased to exist. The once great annoyance was now a pile of debris strewn across his floor after he grabbed it, yanking out of the wall socket and chucked it across HD room, where it collided with the unforgiving walls. Damn, it felt good. Now I'll have to go get a new one, though. Don't matter, because it still felt great. He sat up in his bed and stretched, wincing as the pain from his overworked muscles hit him like a ton of bricks. Naruto had been training as much as possible whenever possible since that fateful day 8 months ago. On that day, Naruto was served a heaping dish of humble pie, courtesy Hinata's ill-tempered cousin, Neji. Just thinking back on it brings back all the physical pain, as well as the psychological. Flashback. Naruto was walking with Hinata, Shikamaru, Chuji, and Ino, as had become traditional between them. Yamanaka Ino had grown to be a surprisingly attractive young girl, but Naruto just didn't see her in that light. He thought that the pink-haired girl, Haruno Sakura, was more appealing, but both girls had such huge chubbies on the teenage heartthrob, Sasuke, that Naruto really had trouble seeing any of them in a light other than one of an idiot. He didn't care, though. Ino was friendly to Hinata, and therefore friendly to him. She would never be friendly towards Shikamaru, though. She was neutral to Chuji, although she always made comments on how much he eats. The reason she would never be friendly towards Shikamaru is because Shikamaru had a problem keeping his mouth shut. The moment he would open it in reference to Ino, he would immediately get backhanded by the girl because he would always say she was either too loud, too annoying, too troublesome, a shrew, or that Sasuke was no one special. Despite the fact that all of those statements were on the line of truth, a person just shouldn't be that blunt towards a volatile girl like Ino. Sakura was worse. After Ino left, Chuji and Shikamaru left to go to their favorite spot, where the lazy boy would just gaze at clouds while Chuji would eat quietly and they would talk about their futures. Weird. Now it was just Naruto and Hinata. She was being, as usual, quiet, and Naruto, as usual, was trying to start conversation with her. He gave up, though, when she stopped responding verbally. That was when he saw him. That smug, arrogant, cruel little prick called Neji. He would never, ever say that to the guy when Hinata was around, which happened to be every time he was around Neji. It was like he was being stopped by the girl. He didn't know what she was trying to stop, but it probably had something to do with evil eyes and fists. Naruto couldn't help himself, though. The guy was so smug and stuck up. He made the snobs at all his old birthdays look like average Joes. Neji really believed he knew it all and could foresee everything. Times change, and Naruto was determined to, one day, teach this guy a lesson. Hinata-sama, Hayashi-sama has been waiting. School has been out for 15 minutes. You were supposed to be at the mansion 5 minutes ago for family training. He looked from her to Naruto, then back to her, shaking his head disapprovingly. Hinata, how can you expect to be respected if you can't even make time for your family? You spend it all with trash like him. What the hell did you just call me? Naruto asked him with the utmost seriousness. Guess this is the day, huh? I finally have the excuse to kick your ass now. What the hell did you just call me? And Naruto-kun, please don't. Hinata, he just called me trash. Are you saying I shouldn't do something about that? He knew she meant well, that she didn't want to see him get into a confrontation with her family member. But this guy was just egging for a conflict, and Naruto was going to be damned if he just stood there and took it. Neji smiled with such smugness, it was almost unbearable. Well, at least she's smart enough to recognize when someone is outclassed. There's a definite difference in our levels. I am of the Hyuga and have mastered almost all of our family's techniques, while you are but the black sheep in a family with no redeeming qualities about them. How you're the son of the Hokage baffles me. That did it. Naruto snapped and went straight at Neji. Ignoring Hinata's pleading for him to not attack Neji, Naruto went at him with as much speed as he could. Throwing his right fist for Neji's face, Neji blocked it with little effort, sending Naruto tumbling to the ground with as little grace as was possible in the situation. Coughing from the dust kicked into the air from his sliding to the ground, he got up, turned back to Neji, and went after him, roaring. He threw another right for Neji. It was blocked again, but this time, Naruto stayed on his feet and swung his left leg towards Neji's midsection. Neji, without so much as a glance, raised his knee to block it and swung lazily at Naruto's face with an open palm. Naruto jumped back to avoid, and when he landed, he saw Neji crouch into a fighting style he had never seen before. His arms were extended out from his sides, the left one taking a slightly deeper dip than the right one, with palms open, facing the sky. His left leg extended while his right leg bent, and he slumped his back down. Naruto didn't even know what was going to happen until he heard Neji's voice utter out the most ominous thing he'd ever heard. "You are my field of divination." Naruto was frozen, unable to move, as he felt the area he was standing on take a different feel. It felt like Hinata's chakra, but much more malevolent. "Jukin, hak rokujuyenshu. Neji ni son, don." Hinata screamed at Neji, pleading with him, but it was too late. He had already moved in for the attack. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and Naruto fell to the ground, writhing in agony, unable to get up and completely helpless. Even scarier was the fact he couldn't gather chakra. It's as if this guy sucked up all my chakra. Oh, now you know the difference in our powers. You are weak, pathetic, and a disgrace to your father's name. The Hokage's son is nothing but a joke. You should just quit the academy, because you don't have what it takes to be a ninja. In flashback, the word stung so much, even more so when Naruto, at his most depressed, when he would question his ability, actually think that what he said was true. I've been scraping by in the first 3 years at the academy with barely passable marks. I'm considered the laughingstock in our class, despite the fact that others have failed. Everyone expects so much out of me. It isn't fair. That's what he would think during those times when he was really down in the dumps. But it was with that day that he rededicated himself to his training. When he would get home from school, he would go out to Meditation Garden or to the dojo, which was a recent addition that his father had put in place of one of the guest rooms, and practice till late at night. That was, however, only possible when he didn't have homework. When he did have homework, he would either spend the evening hanging out with Shikamaru or Hinata, the only 2 people who he knew who were smart. He couldn't count how many times Hinata had helped him with the homework they were required to do. He wasn't lazy. Far from it. He just couldn't grasp a lot of the questions asked in the textbooks. And now, today, the day of the finals to become a genin, he would have to take yet another test, and this one was a doozy for him. It was embarrassing. He still couldn't grasp Bunshin no Jutsu, a simple technique aimed around creating an illusionary doppelganger of yourself, one that isn't solid. He had been practicing the move for the past 2 weeks, but he still couldn't get the hang of it. After a quick shower and changing into his clothes for the day, he hurried to the garden for some last-minute preparations. He had to be able to perform this ability. Bunshin no Jutsu, thumb. Bunshin no Jutsu, thumb. Bunshin no Jutsu. Damn it, he shouted, punching the ground. Why couldn't he get it? Why, after all this time, he still couldn't get the damn jutsu? It was considered a genin-level jutsu, but he just seemed to struggle with it. He had seen a lot of the kids in his class perform the technique at lunch a few days ago, so why couldn't he? Naruto, my boy, do not be so desperate. You have no need for that. But, Dad, I can't get it. Why? Why can't I get this stupid technique to work for me? It's not fair. I tried my best to change this last year. My marks have gone up, but if I can't grasp this technique, then how can I possibly hope to be a good ninja? If I don't pass, I'll be a disgrace. Naruto. He was visibly shaken by the harshness in the voice of his father. You will never be a disgrace to me. I, myself, had problems with Bunshin no Jutsu, but I worked through it like I know you will. Now just relax. Remember this, Naruto. Don't believe everything that appears on the surface. There's something you're missing. Something that you haven't completely grasped yet about your exam. What do you mean? He was really confused. His father always seemed to be full of wisdom and wise phrases, but he would only give you clues and hints towards the meaning of his words, and they were always cryptic. Your teacher left the door open for another way. Good luck, Naruto. I know you will pass. I have the utmost faith in you. His father then stood up and walked out of the garden. Naruto looked at the sun in the sky and recognized the height it was at. Crap. I can figure out what he said later, I hope. I need to get my ass to school. Running as fast as he could, he went to his room, grabbed his backpack, and ran towards the kitchen for his breakfast and lunch. Grabbing his cup of ramen, which he inhaled by throwing it all into his mouth at once, he grabbed his lunch and ran out the door, struggling to get all the noodles down his throat. As he ran towards the academy, he wondered how the others would do. His class, as it went through the years, had shrunk in size, but was still left with some incredibly talented genin hopefuls. He thought back on how the others had progressed as he neared the building. Hinata awoke from her dream-filled sleep with a smile of satisfaction. She hadn't slept that well in a while. Quickly recovering from her stupor, she remembered what today was. The dreaded exam. The reason she dreaded it? This was the one time where she wasn't able to lend support of any kind to Naruto. Before, in all the previous finals for each of their past 3 years, Shithi, Shikama, Chuji, and sometimes Ino would get together for a study session or a hangout, whatever you want to call it. Shikamaru never really studied since he pretty much knew what everything was. He just didn't put the time into his homework. Tests for the lazy boy were a piece of cake. She got out of her futon and slipped into her morning slippers, made her way to the kitchen and made some tea for her cousin, and her father. Sipping on her tea, with no company, though, she thought back on all the time before in the academy. She was so intimidated by the school on that first day that she clung to Naruto like he were a magnet. She was embarrassed for her behavior that day, it being unsuitable of a Hyuga, but was happy that Naruto went along with it and stayed by her. Each day after that of their first year was pretty much the same. They would come in every other day like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, except for the weeks when they had only 2 days of school. Then they only came in on Mondays and Fridays. The second year was the same, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but on occasion they would come in on Saturdays. The third year, as well as this one, they would come in every day of the regular week. They studied just about everything from the shinobi world. Politics, including the wars, the history of each country, and reasons for disputes between them pros and cons of certain styles of fighting, which included ninjutsu, jinjutsu, and taijutsu. They also learned about the flow and manipulation of chakra, the celestial gates, how beneficial the focusing of chakra could be, etc. There was, surprisingly, a lot that could be taught about the shinobi's way of life for 4 years. She had to agree with the wording of Naruto. It's freaking ridiculous. The finals of the first year was a written test. The finals of the second year were performing a standard string of taijutsu moves in a set form, as well as a paper test. The finals of the third year were recognizing jinjutsus. Extra credit if you could break out of it. Sakura was the only one, and a written test. Now, it was the day of the finals for the fourth and last year. If you failed, you had to repeat only the year you failed, but you would lose any chance of teaming up with the students in your class. That was why she was so nervous about today. She wanted Naruto to pass, so she might have the chance to be on his team. I'm not that lucky, though. I've had fun with Naruto all this time, but now, we'll be seeing less of each other. Lady Hinata, it is good to see you are up and ready. Are you prepared for the exam? Turning around, she was met with an indifferent-looking Neji. The event of 8 months ago was still engraved in her mind, and she flinched every time she thought back to it. Hi, I am Neji and Isen. Very good. You have been improving ever since you attended the academy. Your father seems to be pleased with your progress. And Hinata, Igriga. Tell that black sheep. Naruto, I said good luck, he said to her as he walked out of the kitchen while chuckling with arrogance. Oh, Neji, if only you could see how much he's tried to improve since that day. She then noticed the time, ran to her room as quickly as she could, grabbed her backpack, threw on her oversized jacket like she always did, even in the spring and summertime, and ran out of the compound. In a large classroom, Irika sat behind his desk, going through some papers and getting the files and folders ready for the finals. His assistant, Mizuki, sat in a chair next to the desk, helping him out with the paperwork. How do you think this class will do, Irika? Mizuki asked his friend. Irika rubbed his chin thoughtfully before he replied. There's a lot of talent, but only 3 Jounin instructors this year. 4 of my students are going to have to wait till next year if they pass. The lack of Jounin instructors is saddening to hear. especially with the fact that we are considered the most prestigious of the hidden villages. We get more people who want to join our village and assist in its growth every year, and yet we have a lack of instructors for the next generation of shinobi. It certainly is disappointing. But in our times, the ninja who would be considered for the instruction of the next wave of ninja are asked to be reserves for our forces. They cannot help what the Hokage requests of them. We just have to make do. Who are the instructors anyway? Mizuki asked. Well, Kurenai is a fresh jounin, and since she has experience in scouting and information gathering, she will most likely choose from 3 of the best students for that position. Asuma, the previous Hokage's son, will have his own team. I wouldn't know who he would get, but I have a sneaking suspicion on whom he would like to have. As for the 3rd jounin instructor, the Hokage hasn't decided yet on who best bring out the 3rd team's abilities. I have a feeling it will be Kakashi, though. He was the 4th's protege. Mizuki nodded his head thoughtfully. Who do you think will, if they pass, be put on a team this year? Wow, putting me on the spot, are you? Well, Uchiha Sasuke is pretty obvious, as is Haruno Sakura. Hyuga Hinata shows incredible potential, and I don't think she would mess up a bunshin. Aburame Shino is especially talented in his family's trademark skills. Nara Shikamaru has uncanny intelligence and shows potential every now and then, but he seems unmotivated. Despite that fact, I'm pretty confident he will pass. Let's see, that's 5. Yamanaka Ino and Inazuka Kiba will probably be above passable. They show great potential, despite character issues. Akimichi Chuji, I would say, would pass. As for the last one, I'd have to say Naruto. He picked up his performance in the class this past year, despite barely getting through all his tests with barely passable grades. He has struggled before more than the others, but if he brings his A game, he will pass. The others have not shown much potential. When he finished, he breathed a deep sigh, filled with anxiousness. He hated judging his students like that, but he had to admit it was almost obvious except for the last 2 people. He was pretty confident, though, that his predictions were true. Well, Irika, let's get ready to find out. I'll go ring the bell. Mizuki got up and disappeared out of the classroom. A moment later, the bell could be heard and the ruckus began. 10 minutes later, after the students went to their seats, the class having been drastically cut down from the beginning 40 or so, down to a meager 13, Irika stood up and cleared his throat, demanding silence. Very good. Now I know you all know what today is, and I'm not going to make you suffer through any more waiting than you already have to. Me and Mizuki will be grading your performance of the test requirement. Just in case you happen to not know or forgot, you have to create a bunshin. Create a good bunshin and you'll be passed. It has to be acceptable by mine and Mizuki's standards. Understood. When everyone nodded or spoke hi, he continued. All right, alphabetical order. Aburame Shino, please come with us. Naruto watched as they walked out of the room, still trying to figure his way out of this situation with a passing grade. What the hell did my father mean by the teacher left it open for another way? Damn you, Dad, and your cryptic messages. Shino came back in with a Hittite in hand, no emotion being shown on the boy, probably because you couldn't see a damn thing on him. What was up with the shades and trench coat anyways? Shino looked like a world-class freak, the type you would meet in a dark alley. All right, Akimichi Chuji. The pudgy boy walked away with the instructors holding a bag of chips in his hand, always with the potato chips. When he returned a few moments later, he was grinning happily with his Hittite tied on his head. Naruto didn't even recognize the fact that Irika called out for 2 more people, one returning without a headband, the other with a headband. Next, Haruno Sakura. She jogged to the instructors as they took her away for just a few moments before she came back in with her headband in hand. Hyuga Hinata. Good luck, Hinata-chan. Arigato, Naruto-kun. She shuffled over timidly to Irika and Mizuki, who left and came back a few moments later, Hinata sporting her Hittite around her neck. Naruto smiled at her warmly, very happy for her. Inazuka Kiba. Yahoo! My turn. He jumped from his desk all the way to the ground in front of the teachers and followed them. Naruto used this time to get a quick bit of info from Hinata. Hey, Hinata-chan. Congratulations. Thank you, Naruto-kun. I'm sure you will be joining me soon. She blushed and fidgeted in her seat as she spoke with him. Well, that's what I want to talk to you about, Dash. Woo! Kiba's enthusiastic shout echoed through the classroom, cutting Naruto off and gaining a glare from the blonde-haired youth. Obviously, Kiba had gotten his headband. The little dog on top of his head barked happily. Nara Shikamaru, you're next. Groan, so troublesome. He mumbled on his way out the door, earning a chuckle for Naruto and a giggle from Hinata. And Naruto-kun, you were saying? Huh? Oh, yeah. I just wanted to say I'm really happy for you. She gasped slightly and went beet red. Okay, good. She bought it. Now what? I wanted to do it without help for once, but this is the time when I should be begging for it. What am I not getting here? Shikamaru walked back in, his headband in hand. The next person, two people, were people Naruto didn't really pay any attention to, although he guessed he should have. One of them was particularly talented with Jinjutsus, but was weak everywhere else. But that person also came back in with a headband. The other person didn't. Uchiha Sasuke, you're next. Naruto heard Sakura and Ino tell him good luck as he went by. Sasuke threw a passing glance over to Naruto, which got a curious return look from him. A few moments later, he walked back in, his tie tied on his head. Uzumaki Naruto, gulp, this is it. Oh gods, please help me. Good luck, Naruto-kun. I know you can do it. He heard Hinata say to him as he passed by her. He stopped where he was, turned to her, and gave her his best confident look, which probably ended up looking stupid on the boy's face. As he walked with the instructors to an unoccupied classroom, he kept thinking about how he was going to do this. All right, Naruto, make a bunshin and you pass. Simple as that. It clicked. A bunshin, make a bunshin. I get it. You said make a bunshin? Yes, Naruto. That's what I've been saying for 2 weeks. Make a bunshin, final exam, replied Irika in exasperation. Well, I can't perform bunshin no jutsu. Mizuki and Irika gave him curious looks. Then, but I can do this. With that, he took his hands and formed the ram seal, making the eyes of Irika and Mizuki bulge. Gahibun sin no jutsu. After the cloud of dust settled, there were 2 Narutos standing there looking at them. Oh my god, Naruto! You can't make a simple bunshin, but you can make a Kage bunshin? The 2 Narutos then performed a game of rock, paper, scissors. One made paper, the other scissors. Oh man, he always beats me. One of them said with a pout on his face before it disappeared, and only one Naruto was left standing there. Do I pass? Why, yes, you do. You have no complaints, do you, Mizuki? None at all. Very impressive, Naruto. Your father will be very proud to hear this. Naruto responded to the praise with the brightest smile he had probably ever given his teacher and his assistant. Naruto, how long have you been able to do that technique? Irika asked him out of curiosity. About a month now. This is the second time I've performed the move. But I spent so much time trying to be able to perform it that making a regular bunshin just wouldn't happen for me. He then rubbed the back of his head in an embarrassed manner. Wow. Congratulations, Naruto. You deserve it. You've really proven yourself today, Naruto. Here, this belongs to you, he said to him as he handed Naruto his attire. Naruto smiled brightly at the headband, tying it around his head with enthusiasm, and followed them back to the class. Naruto, upon walking in, sporting his attire, got some of the students to start speaking in whispers while Hinata just looked at him in awe. Congratulations, Naruto-kun, she said like a giddy schoolgirl, which she was except for the giddy part. Thank you, Hinata-chan. Yamanaka Ino, you're last. Let's finish this up. She walked down, but made a quick stop by their seats and whispered congrats to both of them before making her way with the instructors to the classroom he had just been in. A moment or so later, she returned with the headband tied around her head, skipping back to her seat. Irika then went to the front of the class and scanned the room, looking everyone up and down. 11 graduates, but only 3 instructors. Either a couple people will be left out, or 2 Jounin instructor will have an extra student. That would be a bit unorthodox. All right, congratulations to those who succeeded in the finals. Me and Mizuki are very proud of your progress and your efforts so far. Dumo, Melinda, I am sorry, but you will not be passing with your fellow classmates. You can try again next year. Naruto looked back to the students he named and saw the boy, Dumo, shaking his head miserably and in disappointment while the girl, Melinda, had her face on her desk and in between her arms. Her shoulders twitched slightly every now and then and were probably a sign of the girl sobbing. Naruto turned back to the front, trying not to feel guilty for them, but finding it hard. The academy had been an utter bitch. The stories of Kakashi and Itachi passing the academy earlier than the others had sent him into believing the academy was easy and he would do the same thing. But damn, was he ever wrong. The curriculum, assignments, schedules, workload, and requirements were murderous. As Irika said, congratulations. But this is not over yet. There are 11 graduees, but only 3 instructors have been assigned to this year's graduating class. Everyone started to mumble and gasp in shock. It was a well-known fact that the graduating ninjas were split into 3-man cells and assigned to one jounin teacher to help further their abilities and take them on missions. But now, only 3 instructors for 11 students. That's not fair, Irika-sensei. We all have worked hard for this, right? And you're telling us that 2 of us are going to have to suffer because of that? That's bull, shouted Kiba, while his dog growled and yipped angrily with him. I know. I totally agree with you, Kiba, but rules are rules, and our situation is not really helping with the scenario. The Hokage just can't give up as many of our village's talented ninjas as he wants without there being consequences. He gives an additional jounin instructor to the graduates, and the village loses a potential defender against enemy forces. Do not fret, though. The ones that might be left out will automatically be on a team when next year's jounin instructors are assigned. For those who do not get a team this year, consider it your opportunity to relax and enjoy your free time. You'll have a year to get better so that you will be better prepared when you are put on your team. It may seem unfair, but it could be a blessing in disguise for some of you. Now, all those with their Hittite report to this classroom tomorrow to find out which of you will be assigned to teams. That is all. Class is dismissed for the rest of the day. Irika then nodded to the class as he got a high in response. Everyone started exiting the classroom and talking with each other. Naruto was followed by Hinata, of course, while he went to go find Shikamaru and Chuji and join them. A day of sitting under shade in peace would be nice, especially after the emotional stress he had put himself under today. Yo, Chuji, Shikamaru, oi Naruto, Hinata, congratulations to both of you. Chuji said to them with his usual, very friendly smile. Shikamaru had his hands in his pockets and was walking as if it were tasked to do so. Likewise to you both. So, are you all excited about getting an instructor? I know I am. I can't wait to get started doing missions. Naruto beamed after he finished his statement, so happy that he finally had that monkey off his back. Actually, I don't care either way. It'll be good to finally start doing something other than homework, but I wouldn't mind not being on a team and waiting for a year. The relaxation time sounds tempting. Naruto laughed at Shikamaru, as did Chuji, but Hinata stayed silent. Hey, Hinata, something troubling you? You seem more quiet than you usually are, asked the lazy Nara. Gee Gomen, Shikamaru-kun, She gulped and thought about how to word this. I just don't want to not have a team, this year. Naruto looked upon her sadly and with a little bit of pity. He thought he had it bad, but she is supposed to be the heir to her clan. Naruto's clan didn't even have a respectable past lineage. The Hyugas, however, were considered to be the noblest and most prestigious of all the clans. If she were not be put on a team, her family may think that she has disgraced them all. Hinata-chan, I'm sure you'll be put on a team tomorrow. In fact, I am positive you will. So don't let yourself be dragged down by any negative thoughts, okay? If his words didn't reassure her, then his smile certainly did. When she nodded and smiled back, Naruto felt better. It feels good to help somebody. If only someone could reassure me that I will be on a team. So what's the plan, guys? Gonna go and just sit under the shade as usual? Nah, I'm not sure about you guys, but I'm still sleepy, so I'm going back home to sleep till tomorrow. Bye. Shikamaru turned down a street and went on his way back to his house. I was gonna get something to eat if you guys want to come along. Chuji told Naruto and Hinata. They both looked at each other and then back to him, nodding. Cool, then follow me. I know this place called Ichiraku's. They have the best ramen around. Naruto laughed at him, which earned a puzzled look from Chuji. I already know about that place. Me and Hinata have been there before. I'm cool with it. How about you, Hinata? I'm fine with it, she said, poking the toe of her sandals into the ground. She, Naruto, and Chuji walked off to the ramen stand, talking and laughing when it was appropriate. Naruto and Hinata were especially happy having that weight off of their shoulders. Naruto felt that he could breathe for the first time in a while. Evening had fallen across Konoha, and there was a certain buzz of excitement going through the village. The lights were dimming on the streets, but they stayed on in the houses, as many people were finding it difficult to get to sleep tonight. Not only did tomorrow mark the end of school for the academy students, but it also signaled that 3 new teams would be formed. It was always a big deal to most of the villagers because they found the ninja tradition of their village to be as vital as the more normal side of the village. Those incapable of being ninjas or who just didn't have the desire to be a ninja were still enthralled with the customs of the shinobi lifestyle, for the village thrived on the ninjas. In one particular household, a stern, cold-faced man looked upon his son in silence, viewing the boy being a little unnerved while under the gaze of the man. "Sasuke, I have heard that your marks were at the very top. I am pleased with your progress." Sasuke loosened a little under the compliment, but still stayed a little tense. In truth, Sasuke was surprised at the compliment that came from his father. He had seemed disappointed that Sasuke had not awakened his Sharingan yet, but the more elderly of their clan who were blessed with the ability to feel the wavelengths of chakra from individuals had said that the time was nearing. The boy would activate the Sharingan. It was just dormant, and they would have to be patient until then. "Thank you, Otis-san. Let's just hope that you are put on a team where you will not be held back, and with an instructor who will help ascend you to the next level. I have heard that Hatake Kakashi might be an instructor. If that is so, then you will most certainly get the attention that is deserving of you, my son." He looked out of a window, and taking note of the darkness of the outside, he continued, "But we will find out tomorrow. It is late, so go to bed and get some rest. Tomorrow is yet another big day for you." He smiled warmly at Sasuke and motioned for him to leave. Sasuke stood, bowed slightly to his father before saying good night to him, and left to go to his room. On his way to his room, he was surprised to see Itachi standing outside of his room, as if waiting for him. The always red-eyed Nin looked at him casually but calculatively, taking into account almost every little thing. His unusual perceptiveness always gave Sasuke the creeps, as well as the fact that he always seemed to have his Sharingan activated. The familiar 2 wheels of the first level of his clan's blood limit were visible, even in the dim light of the hallway they were standing in. "Can I help you, Itachi and I-san?" The man in question just walked directly to him, kneeling and poking in the head like he always did, smiling at him more warmly than usual. "Not really. Just wanted to tell you that I am proud. You have come along very well, and father is more pleased than he lets on. Do not let anything think that you can be held down, okay? Just because the team you may be assigned to might be unorthodox to you does not mean that you will be held back or slowed down. Your team is your life. Don't forget that, okay?" He then ruffled his little brother's hair, smiling and chuckling when Sasuke flailed his arms and groaned in annoyance for him to stop. "Good night, Otudo." As he walked away, Sasuke looked at his retreating form, feeling that something was slightly amiss about his brother's demeanor. The sun was rising on a new day as the warm wind of spring blew throughout Konoha. A new day and a new generation. Many of the more veteran ninjas realized that this group was filled with the next generation of many powerful shinobi families, namely the Hyugas and the Uchihas. Some would consider the Uzumaki boy in this classification if it weren't for the fact that the family wasn't really a shinobi family. The Yondaime was the only Uzumaki in their clan to really show the most promise since his grandfather, but his grandfather had come from grass country. A civil war that had broken out in grass country was what led the family of the Uzumaki to leave and head for a more stable country and government. Fire country was their ultimate stop, and Konoha was where the Yondaime's father made him go to get a better life. And a better life is what the fourth now had. He had a family of his own, the position of political power in the village he loved, and was the most revered of all the Kages, even more so than the Sandaime of Suna. "Hokage-sama, the shinobi you have summoned have gathered. Shall I let them in?" asked a man with a rather long toothpick, or is that a sunbon, in his mouth. "Yes, I must speak with them about the arrangements I have made for the students." The man nodded, bowed, and stepped outside, leaving the door closed for only a few moments before it was opened again, with numerous people walking in, all of them being shinobi. They were mumbling amongst each other until he cleared his throat for attention. After everyone hushed each other, he gazed around the room, noting that even his tardy-prone apprentice was there. Very well, let's begin, shall we? Irika was scanning the classroom, looking at the students that had taken their seats. Every single one of them wasn't even whispering to each other, passing around gossip, or not paying attention to him. He was their sole focus right now, and it made him realize just how tense this situation was for them. This was their profession, their livelihoods. They had chosen at a young age to take a step into a world that would be their workplace, their duty, and their career. It awed Irika just how different these kids were from normal people living in towns and villages that were not dedicated to the shinobi lifestyle. The kids in those towns chose their professions when they were well into their teens, going through numerous years of schooling, learning things far more demanding of the intellect than what the students here had to learn. Irika's students had to learn about dangerous situations, codes of conduct on missions, and how to fight. The kids outside of the shinobi life learned science, history, mathematics, and literature, and even though Irika's students were taught in those fields as well, normal kids learned the finer points of those areas of study. Now focused on the look of desperation in the faces of his students, Irika decided, not for the first time recently, that he should speed up the process to go ahead and relieve the minds of his students. 9 students would be separated into 3 teams. The remaining 2 individuals would have to wait till next year. Good morning, class. Today, I am sad to say, is the last day you will have to see me. To this, the class cheered sarcastically, playing along with Irika's teasing comments. You don't have to be afraid to visit, though. Snickers from the class now. But now I feel that you all are ready for the final decision. So without further ado, I'll begin. The students begin shuffling to the edge of their seats, on edge and on the verge of going crazy. Team 7, Uchiha Sasuke, with the mention of his name, Ino and Sakura looked at each other, silently challenging each other. Please let me be on his team, thought Sakura. I'm the one who deserves it, thought Ino. Uzumaki Naruto. Now everyone started to get interested in the last person, and Sakura and Ino were thrilled, feeling that they both would have the chance to be on the same team as 2 cute guys such as them. And Hyuga Hinata, Ino's and Sakura's jaws dropped. They both seemed to mumble out, and it isn't fair. Sasuke was, on the inside, silently brooding over the choice in his teammates. He would have thought that they might have held him back until his conversation with Itachi last night. Now he was stewing their traits over and over in his head. Naruto was a dense idiot, but the low marks did not take away from the fact that he was near the top of the class in ninjutsu, under only him. His poor performances in the earlier years of the academy were long forgotten in the improvement made this year. The girl was the most troubling thing. Her taijutsu was among the best in the class, under him, but it seemed that something was amiss with her. Something along the lines of being refrained, as though she were holding back. Maybe he was reading too much into it. He was thankful neither the pink-haired, neither the blonde-haired girl had been assigned to his team. They would have just been annoying. Sasuke guessed he was kind of lucky. Now it was just a matter of having a good Jounin instructor, and he would be able to ascend his power. Hinata was silently ecstatic. How could her fortunes have come out any more perfect? She was to be on the same team as the boy who had helped her with her most troubling difficulty. Every time she saw him fall on his face but then get back up, she would smile and find a greater strength from within her. However, more and more lately, it was getting harder and harder for her to focus completely around the blonde-haired boy who she was friends with. Something strange would keep on happening that hadn't really happened until that first day she saw him at the stream. The day she watched him walking on water. That day she knew something about this boy, that he would be something special. If only her cousin could see his good points. If only Neji could have seen how hard Naruto had been struggling to become better, to become stronger. Naruto's reaction was one of mixed emotions. He was happy that he would have someone familiar on his team, but Sasuke was going to be an issue. He could just feel it. If there was something Naruto hated more than anything, it was snobs and stuck-ups. That's why Neji always pissed Naruto off. That's why all those people at his past birthdays pissed him off. And Sasuke, Naruto feared, was going to be the same as Neji, and Naruto didn't know if he could work with someone that smug. Oh well, there was a reason we were put together. Maybe hearing it will make him slightly less snobbish. I can only hope. Team 8, Haruno Sakura, Inazuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. Sasuke smirked and chuckled evilly. The pink-haired nuisance was out of his hair and stuck on a team with Bug Boy, who he had overheard was one of the people she was most unpleased about being around. More bluntly, she says the boy is icky. Looking over at the girl who was in her row, he saw her head down and shivering. Ha ha ha, serves you right for stalking me like all the rest of those idiot girls. The only one who hadn't done that, and the only female in the class he had respect for, just so happened to be on his team. She's going to be a lot more bearable than the others. Team 10, Yamanaka, Ino, Nara Shikamaru, and Akimichi Chuji. Naruto cringed when he heard Shikamaru's name come right after Ino's, but at least Chuji would be on the lazy boys team to help give him support. That was the only thing the boy could give, but he would also need it since Ino had a problem with the eating habits of Chuji. Naruto was a bit saddened. He wanted Shikamaru to be on his team a lot. Shikamaru's intelligence was to be marveled, and his skills were impressive. Control over shadows was, in a more simplistic sense of description, cool. Irika had just finished telling the remaining two that they were excused, apologizing to the miserable-looking genin profusely, and assuring them that they would have a team guaranteed in next year's graduating class. He thought back to the Yondame's reassuring words that they would have enough Jounin instructors next year after enough they have returned from long-term missions outside of the village. After they left, he looked at the remaining graduees, analyzing the teams and remembering all the ruckus from earlier this morning in the Hokage's tower as the Yondame, who had given the final say in which teams the graduates are split into. The original suggestion had been Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto, Hinata, Kiba, and Shino, Ino, Shikamaru, and Chuji. Just a slight change between teams 8 and 7, but it seemed to make things a lot stranger. But who was Irika to question the Hokage? Now that you all know of your teams, you will wait for your instructors to arrive. Good luck to you all. After he finished that statement, a woman with rather long hair that was thick with quantity, red eyes, and form-fitting clothing walked into the room. Naruto noticed Hinata's eyes brighten when the woman stepped in. And why shouldn't she have? If this was their instructor, then damn. Everything would seemingly be going in Hinata's favor, as well as his. Kurenai was definitely strong. He could tell that back when she would escort them to school. But when she spoke up, he seemed to see the bright look in Hinata just crash. Teammate, step forward and follow me. Naruto watched as Kiba jumped over his table and landed nimbly at the feet of Kurenai. Shino stood up and moved calmly to meet up with Kiba and Kurenai, while Sakura had just begun standing up. She was still sulking about not being on a team with Sasuke, and Naruto thought it was sad yet hilarious at the same time. Sad for the fact that she swooned every time Sasuke even looked at her, and hilarious in two ways. The first way was the fact that she was so confident she would pass, be on a team with Sasuke, and he would see the good in her, and now that wasn't possible. The second way was the fact she had also vocally announced her displeasure with Shino and his talents. Shino was infamous in the class for being an A-class weirdo that freaked out damn near everyone around him because of his family's abilities. The use of bugs was considered weird, disturbing, and just plain gross. Naruto didn't care though. He thought the guy was pretty damn cool. After Sakura got onto the bottom floor, she stood to the left of Kiba since Shino was standing to Kiba's right. Kurenai looked over her team, then took a look back up to Hinata and smiled at her, but it was a sad and disappointed smile. Kurenai must have liked Hinata a lot and really wanted to be her instructor. Hell, that would have been awesome to Naruto. But things don't always work out the way you want them to. As they started walking out of the room, a tall man stepped into the room. He looked at the teams and called his team. Team 10, come on now. Let's get going. Shikamaru stood up solemnly, mumbling under his breath as he always seemed to do when he was told to do something he just didn't want to do, which was almost always. Ino had already bounded her way down the steps, taking a quick pit stop to say goodbye to Sasuke, who just muttered something underneath his breath. Chuji walked with Shikamaru down the steps and stood there waiting for Ino, since she had made slowed down yet again to say something to Hinata that Naruto couldn't make out. Then Ino went down to meet with her team and their apparent instructor. The man, tall and imposing, with a ragged-looking beard, nudged his head towards the door and walked towards it, the others following him out of the room. Now, Team 7 was left alone, waiting for their instructor. This was looking good for Sasuke, if he was correct. If our instructor is indeed late, then hopefully it's the guy that Itachi always talked about and who father mentioned last night. Kakashi was his name if I am correct. Irika, who watched from down the hall as Team 10 was led out of the building, waited for the instructor for Team 7. Come on now. It shouldn't take this long now. He now thought back to the morning and the squabble that had occurred from the Yondame's rulings on the teams. Flashback. On the top floor of the massive building, shinobi of various rank had been assembled. Irika and Mizuki were there, going over paperwork. The Yondame was speaking with a man in a mask, that man apparently being one of the ANBU, and several Jounin were speaking with each other. Before he got started with that, though, there were some things he needed to clear up. All right, I've been informed that 11 students passed. Now, as you have all been informed, this year the village can only spare 3 Jounin to instruct teams. Whispers and mumbles were heard from the group in the room. I had to choose one of 2 options. Either we give 2 Jounin to 4th student, or the other students will wait a year and go with next year's graduates. I have decided on the latter of the 2, and will now discuss who gets who. The gathered ninja hushed and looked at the Hokage intently. Who, sir, has been chosen of the 11? Asked Kurenai, agitated by the delay with the essential information. Yes, I will let Irika explain that. You may know Irika, if you will. Yes, sir. I have graded the students and judged them, not just from this year, but years previous. I have come to a conclusion that these will be the ninjas that I feel deserve to be assigned to a Jounin instructor. Everyone focused on him, hanging on to every word. Though some of the ninjas gathered had issues with being babysitters, they were very interested on this particular group. This class seemed to be very talented. Uchiha Sasuke, Aburame Shino, Haruno Sakura, Narashiko, Hyuga Hinata, Inazuka Kiba, Yamanaka Ino, Akimichi Chuji, and Uzumaki Naruto. The Yondame seemed to glow with pride when his son's name was mentioned, and it didn't go unnoticed. Several people snickered at his satisfied smile. Very well. Hearing who the students are that will be assigned to a Jounin, I will now assign 3 Jounin to these Genin. Step forward when you are called. Sarutobi Asuma. A gruff, tall man stepped forward with a cigarette still burning in his mouth. You will receive the Nara, Akimichi, and Yamanaka. Their parents worked well together. There shouldn't be any issues with the kids. Irika chuckled and mumbled out besides the fact the Yamanaka girl doesn't get along with the Nara boy. Hokage-sama, said Asuma as he stepped back, bowing slightly. Yuhi Kurenai, the attractive young woman, just turned Jounin and stepped forward. I'm sorry to tell you this, but you will be teaching students, but not the one I know you want. Your team would consist of Haruno Sakura, Inazuka Kiba, and Aburame Shino. What? But you know how much I care for that girl, Yondame. Hinata has been under my watchful gaze ever since she first attended the school. That's just not fair. Besides, if I am to be in charge of a reconnaissance team, then she would be an invaluable addition to it. I implore you to reconsider. Irika raised his eyebrows, surprised by the brashness of her nature and the irritants in her voice. She was truly upset at the Hokage's decision. I'm sorry for your disagreement with my decision, but it is final. Your team is indeed a reconnaissance team, and Kiba and Shino have more than enough ability for that. Haruno Sakura's intelligence is very impressive, and her Jinjutsu awareness is top-notch. She will take care of any weakness in your team, as will the others take care of her weaknesses. You might be surprised with how well she fits in with your team. Give her a chance before you jump to conclusions, Kurenai. She glared at the Yondame, who only smiled in return, seemingly oblivious to her stare, and she stepped back into the group. So, you feel, Yondame, sir, that she will do better in a team with the Uchiha boy and your son? What role will she have then? She'll just be overshadowed by the attention the others will get. And what do you mean by that, Kurenai? He really was getting perturbed by her display. It was unbecoming of a shinobi he had selected to teach their newest reconnaissance team. Well, obviously you will need someone with considerable skill who is knowledgeable of the members' abilities to teach them. I'm assuming you will have our always tardy Kakashi to instruct them. Am I right? Do you really think she, or anyone else in that team, will get the attention they deserve with him? Everyone seemed a little taken aback by the tone of her voice. She was really flustered, and it was showing. Okay, Kurenai-chan, I now see why you feel so strongly, but do not worry. She, as well as Sasuke and Naruto, will get the attention they deserve. And what did I tell you about jumping to conclusions? She looked at him a little shocked since his voice went from being stern to being teasing. Kakashi will stay under my immediate command, but will return to the rank of where he belongs. Everyone now looked at him shocked, Kakashi especially. Kakashi, you will take your rightful place back in the ANBU. No arguments. It is an order from your Hokage. You will be replacing the man I have chosen to be the instructor for these students. After seeing all the shocked and confused faces, he felt it was only right that he elaborate. Let me explain. A Sumisel is a team that, once matured and skills developed, will be considered an investigations team. They have the ability of capturing targets, detaining them, and, with the Yamanaka's ability, able to look inside the minds of targets, effectively getting information that might be necessary. Kurenai Cell is a team that will be trained in the art of reconnaissance, as you all know. They will be taught to gather information from difficult areas and scout areas that might be considered dangerous. With the intelligence of the Haruno girl and the abilities of the Inuzuka and Aburame boys, this team should, once matured, be very effective at gathering information pertinent to missions and political matters. The final team, which will consist of Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto, and Hyuga Hinata, will be considered this year's attack cell. The group will be trained in the art of effective combat and will be trained in order to further that ability to fight. I hope that this year's team will be the spitting image of Mato Guy's team from last year. Having said that there are some major doubts, I would have chosen my apprentice, Kakashi, to instruct them if things were just a little bit differently. But as Kurenai has said, there's a chance that favoritism could occur and cause controversy between not just the genin and the team, but others outside of the team, thinking that I have shown favoritism. The truth of the matter is that all three kids that will be in this team have great potential, but need someone to help them work through the roadblocks that are in the way. That is why I have chosen the instructor I did. Does my logic sit well with you now, Kurenai-san? Everyone seemed taken aback by the amount of thought he had put into everything. He must have studied the students thoroughly to be able to come to such a decisive conclusion. So you think she would fit well into the role of a fighter? Sir, without trying to sound like I want to argue with you, I think you really don't know how she dash. Kurenai-chan, stop. That is enough of that. My decision is based not on her desires, but what needs to be done. She is a Hyuga, Kurenai. If she were to be put on your team, classified as a surveillance and reconnaissance team, she would be seen in her clan as weak. The elders of the Hyugas are pressuring Hyuga Hayashi to choose someone else as the heir because Hinata seems to not show as much promise as her younger sister or even Hayashi's brother's son. I am doing what I feel is best for her. I have nothing but the best intentions for everyone in the village, and that is what all of my decisions are based upon, the best intentions for my village's people. Stop questioning me. Kurenai hung her head, now taking into full account what he was saying. The yondaime took a deep breath, sighed out the breath, and then looked back to the Jounin instructors. Now, as I was saying, Kakashi, you will take your rightful place back in the ANBU and replace the man I have assigned to teach the team. Uzumaki-sensei, are you positive about this? I may have my quirks, but I will certainly be a great instructor for the final team. You don't have to pull an ANBU off the squad. But his sensei just raised his hand to quiet him. Kakashi wanted to keep on, to plead with him to not do this, but the ANBU, who was beside the yondaime, stepped forward. Now, Kakashi-san, that is no way to speak to our Hokage. Now, is it? Asked the man, reaching up to his mask and taking it off. The question wasn't really as smug as it sounded. It was more along the lines of teasing Kakashi than questioning him. Once the mask had been removed, the chiseled, hard face of the man came into focus. Despite the face guard that his attire had been made into, his features were still visible, but not enough to be definite. But you would recognize this man in a crowd. He had a sort of allure to him that just attracted your attention. The bodywear was pretty heavy-duty. The armor he wore would probably stop a very well-thrown kunai, but it was known that the armor was not heavy and therefore did not weigh down the wearer. He looked strong, and Kakashi recognized him immediately. Him? He's wanting him to teach genin. Kakashi feared that the yondaime may be seen as throwing his weight around as the Hokage and making unfair judgments in this situation. He is the instructor for the final team, and this is a final decision. No more arguing, no more bickering. Got it? Good. The man stepped towards Kakashi and handed him the mask he had been wearing. He took off the body armor, revealing he was wearing the Jounin jacket underneath, and also handed it to the bewildered Kakashi. Kakashi, from this point on, you will take over my role as captain, said the man, smiling as Kakashi took the things from him with a shaky hand. Good. Now that is over, I believe Irika and Mizuki, as well as all of you, have someplace you need to get to. Kakashi, stay behind with the captain. I have just a few more things to discuss before I can dismiss you both. They both nodded and stayed while everyone else left. In flashback, Irika was still in awe at the massive amount of dedication the Yondaime had taken into getting himself familiarized with the students in order to make such decisions with the utmost confidence. He then heard footsteps and, turning towards a sound, saw a man stepping into the classroom. Naruto jerked his head up at the sound and was a little surprised that he didn't recognize the man, although something about him was familiar. Is he our instructor? Was the only thing he could think. Sasuke had the same thought, but was disappointed that he wasn't Kakashi. He had been told that Hatake Kakashi had a Sharingan that was always activated hidden behind his Itaiite and had spiky, silver hair. Hinata was unsure what to think. She could tell that he was strong, but something was different about him than the other instructors. Team 7, I assume. They all nodded. Good. My name is Yamato, and I will be your sensei from now on. CHP 5, Cell 7, Konoha's royalty. Kakashi stood next to his sensei, wearing the mask of the ANBU, but was obviously agitated. He kept tapping his fingers against his arms and biceps, and his foot kept tapping the floor in an annoying pattern that kept disrupting the blonde-haired man behind the desk. After failing to find a suitable way to approach the tender subject, he chose to just attack it head-on. Arashi-sensei, why wouldn't you let me have my own team? Why? You know that I have waited for the opportunity. So why couldn't I have had Team 7? And why did you feel it necessary to pull Yamato from the ANBU as its captain to teach a team and then appoint me in his place? His questions, he knew, would probably have a cryptic answer that he would have to resolve like a riddle in order to find the true answer to his questions. What he expected and what actually happened were two different things, though. Kakashi, you have taken Yamato's place for a reason. You belong in the ANBU. As the captain, too. And as for the reason I did not give you the team, is because I wanted you to handle something for me. He then reached into a drawer in his desk and pulled out a folder and opened it, taking out a document of some kind and looking over it for a few moments. As you know, some of our ninjas are over in Wave Country, helping to pick some of the communities up from the depths of poverty and destruction. In one particular town, a man known as Tazuna is attempting to build a bridge to help let traffic into and out of their little city in order to boost the economy of the area. There have been complications, however. Some of our finest have been taken down recently, and it is becoming a hassle to protect the bridge builder. Our ninjas have been dying over there. Why haven't you done something about it? Who's killed them? Kakashi asked, now frantic and upset at the fact that this was the first time he had heard of any deaths over in Wave Country. It was true that many ninjas were over there to help rebuild certain communities because of grinding poverty. Konoha had taken a position in the matter and started giving aid to certain parts that were in the most danger of dying and becoming uninhabitable. For this reason, many ninjas were scattered across Fire Country and Wave Country, seriously depleting the amount of truly skilled shinobi in Konoha down to its finest, which was the reason for the lack of ninjas offered for this year's class of graduees. And now, Kakashi was being told the ninja were being killed. Yes, Kakashi, they've been dying. To your second question, I just have one question for you. What could I do against an unknown foe? If we did not have any knowledge of the enemy, then if I sent more ninjas over there to face the enemy, it would be like sending blind sheep to the slaughter. No, Kakashi, I had a way to do what was best for our people. But now we know who is responsible. Erasure laid a picture of a shady-looking man onto the desk and slid it towards Kakashi, who picked it up to stare at it carefully. A smug, cruel smile and dark shades covering his eyes only helped to give the man a more shady appearance. The man's hair was gray and he had wrinkles on his forehead, signifying that he was old. The question now was who was this man and what did he have to do with everything? That man, Kakashi, is a tycoon called Gatu. He came into Wave Country and pushed his power around, picking up the right people and gaining more and more territory. Eventually, he had monopolized more than half of the country and oppressed them with his goons. Normally, these swords for hire would be easy enough for our chunins to take down, but apparently Gadu's wealth has been put into the pocket of a rather vicious and dangerous rogue nin from Hidden Mist by the name of Momochi Zabuza. Kakashi visibly tensed up after hearing the rogue nin's name. The Momochi Zabuza? Momochi Zabuza of the Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. When Erasure nodded grimly, Kakashi gritted his teeth. That bastard. He'll do anything for money. So what is my role in this? You, Kakashi, along with Itachi, Hate, and Ganma shall go and take down Zabuza, Geto, and all of Gata's men, understand? This will be performed swiftly, thoroughly, and with the utmost efficiency. I don't want any civilians caught in the crossfire. You really think Itachi will be necessary? Why not give me Dash? But he was cut off by the Yondame's hand, raising for him to stop. Itachi shall be coming because I feel it is necessary. Zabuza is not working alone. He has a young man with him too, probably his apprentice, if you can believe it. The young man has been heard to go by the name of Haku, and seems to have a powerful blood limit that gives him special control over ice. You and Itachi should be more than enough for these men, though. There will be no negotiations this time around. Too much blood has been spilt over this matter. You will take them down by any means necessary. When these people decided to attack our allies and our own people, they forfeited all bargaining rights. We will show no mercy to those who attack allies, for it is as though they are attacking Konoha itself, which they have done. I want you all to leave by this evening and send me frequent updates. 2 weeks should be enough for a mission of this magnitude. Now go, he said with vicious intensity, his emotions climbing high as he explained the circumstances. Kakashi noticed this too and admired his sensei. The man, while having some quirks here and there and making a strange decision or two, always had the best of intentions for his village, his people, and his allies. Kakashi knew he couldn't fail in this mission. He would not let his sensei down, especially since it was his first mission as ANBU captain since a while. Hi, Arashi sensei. And with a quick wave, Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke. Erasure turned around in his chair and looked out the window and up to the sky. I've tried so hard to do so much for the village, but it just seems that we end up getting dragged into these inter-country wars and disputes. Will we ever have peace around us? He hung his head and, for the first time in a long time, while no one was around to see him do so, let his unwavering mask drop and he looked absolutely miserable. You look like you could use a drink, my friend. Erasure jerked his head up to see his sensei staring at him from one corner of the room with an understanding smile on his face. You read me like an open book, Ero-senin. Let's take a break. Jiraiya's vein on his forehead pulsed visibly at the sound of his pupil's nickname for him, but just laughed wholeheartedly as his pupil did so. That was the power of the Yondaime. The power to change the atmosphere in a heartbeat. So where are we heading? Yamato sensei asked an impatient Naruto as they calmly made their way through streets, heading towards one of the designated areas where training grounds were scattered about. In all of Konoha, Naruto remembered Irika sensei telling the class that there were approximately 48 training grounds. The ones that were most noteworthy were the last 8, training grounds 40 to 47, because they were the most complex and dangerous, urban legends telling of strange things affecting those areas, and only experienced ninjas can handle those areas. The place they were approaching, if he was right, was the designated spot for training grounds 7 to 13. Fact that they had enough space in Konoha for 48 training grounds baffled Naruto, helping him to understand the vastness of his village. Just goes to show how much Konoha had grown over the years. Yamato continued to walk on while Naruto thought, ignoring the question. The fact was Yamato didn't know really. He just chose a spot in Konoha where he knew there were training grounds and started walking that way. He wasn't really experienced in the whole training and mentoring thing. He was a fighter, a warrior, and he was put in charge of turning these 3 into the same thing. After realizing where he was heading to, he chose one of the grounds in the area mentally and addressed his team. Training ground 13 has sufficient space. Let's head there. First thing for the day, let's see how well you move. Hurry to training area 13 as fast as you can for speed assessment. Go, he ordered, as he ran to the trees that were close by this time. Jumping from tree to tree in a blurring fashion, his students were left gawking at their sensei's speed. He's fast, and I doubt he's really trying. This might prove to be interesting, said Sasuke, who had remained relatively quiet, as had Hinata. He then looked at his two teammates very quickly, then moved towards the trees to go to their designated area. Naruto, not wanting to be outdone, ran to the trees as well, with Hinata close on his heels, but he was moving faster than she was and put distance between each other rather quickly. He was catching up to Sasuke, closing the gap between them, smiling as he did so. Sasuke was always a quiet guy in their class, not really very outgoing, always making himself more distant from those around him, and never taking the initiative to get to know his fellow classmates. His confidence, though, was something that did not go unnoticed by Naruto. The young Uchiha was very confident in his abilities and would not go about in a manner as to not flaunt it. He wanted people to see him. It seemed as though he desired the attention. If Sasuke were to have any thoughts that he might be held back by him and Hinata, then Naruto believed he had another thing coming. When they finally reached Area 13, they came to a stop in front of Yamato, who was standing there as if he had been waiting for an hour. It had been only a span of 2 minutes, but Naruto had pushed a lot of chakra into his legs to give him a better jump across the tree branches. What Naruto was surprised about was the fact that he didn't notice Hinata had closed in on them. They damn near came to a stop at the same time. Yamato saw how they had all picked up their speed and how they were all a little winded from that activity. He mentally cursed the fact that he would have to work on stamina, as well as some of the more advanced exercises to help their progression under him. He began to wonder if it was too early for one particular thing, but he dismissed it when he saw that they had recovered their breath and were now staring at him expectantly. Good. You all have excellent speed, but seem to lack stamina. If you didn't notice, you were all using a bit too much chakra in your legs when you jumped. At their confused and curious looks, he continued. You all put more chakra than was needed into your legs for the short jumps you were making. You should have been using less chakra for the small jumps and use more when you make a longer jump. All three's faces become suddenly solemn as they realized he had been right. Naruto was especially embarrassed. I'll work with you all on that later. Right now, let's get a good, thorough assessment of you all. First, introductions. I know you all know each other, but I don't know you, and you don't know me. So I'll start. My name is Yamato. I enjoy relaxing in the sunshine and peace and tranquility. I dislike those who disregard the well-being of nature around them and those who abuse the land. I feel that people who litter and wastefully cut down trees are scum. My goal is to assist Konoha and the Hokage in keeping the country beautiful and peaceful. Who's next? Sasuke stood up next, looking at each of the people in his group. Letting out a sigh, he started with his introduction. I am Uchiha Sasuke. I enjoy the time I have to train and spar. I want nothing more than to become stronger. I dislike anyone who stands in the way of that path. My goal is to become stronger than my brother. That was not what Naruto was expecting to hear out of Sasuke's mouth. Sasuke was wanting to be stronger than his brother, and when he said it with a slight hint of desperation. Naruto decided he should go next, so he stood up. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I love ramen a lot and never get tired of it. I enjoy being around my friends and hate uptight, smug, arrogant people. As he finished, he gave a quick stare at Sasuke, who noticed it and returned the stare. My goal is to become strong enough to protect those precious to me. I guess that means I would want to become the Hokage then. He chuckled lightly, finding amusement in that statement that no one else seemed to see. He rubbed the back of his neck for a moment more before he sat back down. Yamato was beginning to notice a pattern here, but needed to hear Hinata's introduction before he could be sure. So he looked at her expectantly. She began to stand up, shaking ever so slightly, and her face a little red. Em Hyuga Hinata. I enjoy spending time in the garden at our home and seeing people happy. I dislike pointless arguments and meaningless confrontations. And my goal is become stronger so that I can gain the recognition of my family. When she finished speaking, her head hung a little bit, and Naruto, once again, felt that twinge inside of him. She did nothing but try her hardest, but was always overshadowed. Nobody saw it. Nobody saw the truth behind Hinata. He could only hope that since they were on a team with this guy, Yamato, that she, as well as he, could become stronger. Yamato nodded at her, closed his eyes, and took all the information into account. It appears that they all desire to become stronger so that they can be recognized. Each one wants to become stronger so that they can step out of the shadows of something. Sasuke wants to step out of the shadows of his brother's reputation. Naruto wants to step out of the shadows of his father's reputation. Hinata wants to step out of the shadows of her family's reputation. They all want to be seen as their own selves and not as someone from their families. Very well, now that that is out of the way, let's begin with a practical skills display. Show me something you are good at. They all looked at each other, and Sasuke took the initiative to ask something that had been bugging him. What about you? What are you good at, Yamato Sensei? I mean, it only makes sense that our teacher would show to his students the reason he is our teacher, don't you think? Yamato thought about the young boy's words, nodded his head in understanding, and walked to a patch of dead grass on the ground. Bending down, he performed a series of hand seals, 7 in all, Sasuke mentally noted, and slammed his right hand, palm open, onto the ground. They all felt the chakra swell in his hand, and then disperse when it collided with the ground. Now they were all waiting for something to happen, and wow, did it ever happen? The ground started to tremor, and they could see a faint green glow from the dead grass. Suddenly the dirt started to give way to a green vine that began growing straight up. The green vine started to become thicker and thicker, suddenly taking the color of brown, as long branches branched out in about 9 different places. The leaves were of the healthiest looking green, and apples even grew from it. Naruto's mouth hung open at the sight, as did Sasuke's, but Hinata smiled, thinking it was the greatest thing she had ever seen done. She marveled in its beauty and couldn't believe anyone was skilled enough to make such a tree grow. Yamato held out a hand as an apple fell into it, and he casually tossed it Sasuke, who caught it dumbly. There you go. That's one of my more common techniques. Your turn, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke's eyes changed from shocked to surprised to one of inspiration. He performed the required hand seals and shouted his technique to them. Katan, Fireball Jutsu. He then breathed out a stream of fire that ignited the tree Yamato had just made and in a matter of seconds was turned to ash. Yamato had taken a few steps back from the heat, and once it died away, his tree being reduced to ash, he looked at Sasuke with a mixed look of acknowledgement and regret. Sasuke, why would you do that to Yamato-sensei's tree? Naruto asked, his anger rising at Sasuke's boldness. He asked for a practical skills display. I displayed one of my skills. Besides, that was a jutsu he used to create the tree. He can make another one. No big deal. Actually, Sasuke-kun, I can't just make another one. The soil is finite. When the rich nutrients in the ground have been used up from growing plants and trees, then the soil dies and needs to be refertilized. What I did was not a technique to make a tree, but a technique to reverse the effects of time on the soil. Therefore, whatever used to be in this area of dead grass would regrow. I didn't grow a tree, I regrew it. But what you did was impressive. That technique is chunin level and very dangerous in the hands of someone who does not know how to use it. You have perfect control, and I'm very impressed. While Sasuke would have smiled at the compliment, the knowledge of what Yamato did humbled him to great lengths. Growing a tree was a difficult task indeed, but if he did what he said he did, then this man was performing techniques on A and BU levels, if he was right. Now, let's see what you can do, Hinata. What can I do? I have nothing like Sasuke-kun has. What can I possibly do as a skill that doesn't involve me hurting someone else? She looked at the apple in Sasuke's hands and came up with an idea. She had never tried it before, but it could work. As Sasuke-kun, could I have that apple in your hand? He shrugged his shoulders and tossed it to her. She caught it and held it in the palm of one of her hands. She then took 2 fingers, her index and middle fingers, and used them to poke the apple in a specific point. Yamato paid close attention and noticed that her eyes had veins throbbing. She activated her Byakugan, and I didn't even notice. What happened to the apple really surprised him. It went from its healthy and fresh-looking green to a sickly-looking brown in a matter of seconds. She put her chakra into it and killed it. Impressive. Very good, Hinata. I am impressed that you were able to do such a thing. What exactly did she do, Sensei? Asked Naruto, a little puzzled. She closed off the chakra in that apple, and it died. You see, since the tree was made with chakra, so were the apples that grew off of it. If the chakra is interfered with, it dies rather quickly. Naruto still didn't quite get it, but he got the basics of it. Her family's ability helped her to kill the apple. Now, Naruto, it is your turn. Let's see what you can do. Naruto rubbed his chin thoughtfully while trying to think of something. Well, I guess I could do that. Irika Sensei was impressed with it. Coming to a decision, he formed the ram seal and said his technique's name. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. And poof, after the smoke settled, there stood 3 Narutos, all looking like each other perfectly. Sasuke didn't think it special until he realized exactly what he said. He could perform Kage Bunshin, but he couldn't think of anything else. The fact that Naruto had just done a Jounin-level technique blew his mind away. Hinata was in awe. She was so proud for Naruto that he had finally performed the technique he had been taught before he attended the academy. Yamato was just as impressed as everyone else was. A girl who can even out a fight with a simple nick, even if she is overwhelmed. A boy who has the potential to master any jutsu he wants. And another boy who has mastered a Jounin technique that is supposed to be forbidden. I'll have to have a talk with the Hokage about this, but it still is impressive. These 3 have incredible potential. Naruto, how long have you been able to perform the technique? About a month now. I have been taught how to use only a necessary amount of chakra in a lot of the easier techniques that it took me a while to understand that the more chakra I put into this technique, the better the results. He then dismissed the other 2 Bunshins, and there was only 1 Naruto now. Very good, all of you. You have shown why you are who you are. Now let's move on. Tomorrow, you will all meet me in front of the Hokage's tower at 8 a.m. There, we will speak with the Hokage as he gives us our first mission. I won't lie to you. They won't be anything dangerous or daring. They will be D-class missions that will involve you all doing tasks for clients inside of the village. Until tomorrow, since we still have plenty of daylight, let's continue with our routine. Next will be Taijutsu. You each will have to try and land 1 strike on me. We'll go with 30-minute intervals or until you can't go on. In the case you do land a blow on me, you can stay by and work with whoever is not working with me. After about 3 hours, we'll go on break, and then we can resume. We'll start with you, Sasuke. Sasuke stepped forward without giving the exercise much thought. He personally believed it to be a waste of time, but if he could just land his blow, then he wouldn't have to do this stupid exercise, and he could do whatever he wanted to. He crouched into a fighting position and stared at his sensei with unyielding eyes. The eyes were what Yamato were focused on, and it was what happened next that made him realize that Sasuke was taking this quite seriously. The eyes went from onyx black to crimson dark red, with 2 wheels forming on the sides. He had activated his Sharingan and was leaving no room for a lackadaisical approach. Sasuke was going to come at him, and the eyes showed a bitterness for some reason. Yamato did not get into a fighting position, though, and this was what surprised Sasuke, but he didn't let it show. He ran right at Yamato, swinging with a right hook, but it was blocked by Yamato's right hand lazily. It appeared that by the way he blocked him, that Sasuke would lose his balance, but instead of tumbling to the ground, Sasuke put weight on his right foot, balancing himself and swinging his left foot upwards. Heel aimed for his face, but it too was caught by Yamato's right hand. He gripped Sasuke's left leg, swung out his legs in a sweeping manner, and tossed Sasuke haphazardly in a direction, which direction he didn't care, and Sasuke tumbled to the ground. Gritting his teeth in agitation, Sasuke rose to his feet, brushed off the dirt from his shirt and pants in a cool and calm manner, and suddenly formed a quick set of hand seals and fired 3 small fireballs at him. Yamato did his own set of hand seals much faster than he had when he made the tree grow and thrusted the open palm into the ground again. This time a wall of mud rose, blocking the fireballs, and after another quick 6 hand seals, captured Sasuke in what looked like roots to a tree. He struggled to escape, but could not do so, the roots being much stronger than ropes or any other binding tool. He was completely helpless as Yamato walked up to him and leaned into his ear. I did not say anything about using ninjutsu in a taijutsu practice, but I'm willing to if you want. Wood is naturally burned by fire styles and techniques, but in order to use the wood element, you have to have become accustomed to earth and water chakra styles, both of which defeat fire. So you can continue to try and use your techniques to defeat me, but they won't work, young Sasuke. Sasuke visibly trembled with anger at being so easily handled in combat. He was embarrassed. We are through. You need time to cool down. Hinata, your turn. Let's see if you can keep a cool head unlike our teammate here. Yamato then touched the bindings, and they released him, sinking back into the ground. Sasuke stormed off to the sidelines and sat down, glaring at his teacher. Either Yamato didn't see it or he just didn't care. He was more interested in Hinata and how she would do. Sasuke, now noticing that the girl was about to fight, decided to let what happened to him drop. Naruto, who wanted to tease Sasuke so badly for how he was just owned, was also paying attention to Hinata. He told her before she had gone up to do her best that he knew she was capable of one hit. She shuffled her way up to be a little ways away from Yamato and stood there dumbly. Come on, Hinata. We're no longer in the academy. Granted, it was just yesterday we got out, but I know why you acted the way you did. Now's not the time for such thoughts. He hated how she had not gotten the recognition she truly deserved in the class. She was damn near the best student in the class, but she had a tendency to not give it her all in the department of fighting. A fighting style that could kill your opponent if you hit them the wrong or right way was an unnerving weight on the girl's conscience. She did not want to hurt people. It was just her nature, but she had stated that she wanted to be strong. The only way to become strong was to prove you had the drive. To prove she had the drive, she would have to combat their new teacher, and from the looks of him, he was not going to be any slouch. He smiled with satisfaction, though, when she slid into her fighting stance, her Byakugan activating. Naruto actually felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up slightly. He always got like this when he felt her attitude change. This was the Hinata he wanted to see. He wanted everyone to see this Hinata, the Hinata that you feared to go up against. Yamato was silently amused by how Naruto's words, whatever they were, seemed to change her demeanor so quickly. Her Byakugan now active and her fighting stance in place, it was simply a matter of waiting. She leapt into action, running at a good speed towards him, much faster than Sasuke had, and thrusted an open palm for his stomach. He carefully blocked her by swinging his right hand down to chop at her extended arm's wrist, forcing her to detour to nothingness. She quickly recovered, like Sasuke had, and putting weight into her footing, she spun a lot more nimbly through the motion, and with her left hand, aimed 2 fingers to his left side. He grabbed her left hand and gripped it, trying his hardest to not be hit by her or her chakra. Now, with her left hand caught, she slid with her weight being on her left foot and turned to face him, thrusting with her right palm to his face. He caught this hand, and she knew she had him. He had made a grave miscalculation. The only way he could now avoid being hit was to release her hands. Dipping her body to the ground slightly, she kicked up and thrusted her knee towards his midsection. He moved back just slightly, not releasing his grip on her hands, and was completely taken off guard by the fact that she followed through with a knee thrust and thrusted her left leg at him in a bicycle kick. He released her hands and did a backflip. Now, out of his clutches, she cheered a silent victory because now that he was off balance slightly, she could probably land a blow on him. After he landed, he saw her perform a cartwheel towards him. He stepped back to give himself some range from her. When she got out of the movement, she swung her left arm in a sweeping motion towards his exposed midsection, which he quickly blocked with his right hand but felt a slight sting on that arm after doing so. Looking towards the source, he saw 2 fingers jabbing into his tricep of the blocking arm. Smiling brightly at the young Hyuga girl, he relaxed and bowed slightly. Very good job, Hinata. You may go off and practice with Sasuke, if you 2 wish to do so. I became sloppy trying to dodge your jukin and ended up paying for it. She nodded at him, smiling as well at his compliment of her performance. Naruto couldn't help but want to laugh at the look on Sasuke's face. It was of utter horror at how Hinata had bested their sensei in Taijutsu. Naruto knew, though, as Hinata probably did, that he was holding back. Naruto didn't want to face Yamato at full strength. He would probably get wiped off the face of the planet in a matter of seconds. He wanted to test them, not abuse and humiliate them. He did what he did to Sasuke because the dumbass needed to be humbled. As Hinata walked over to them, Naruto couldn't contain himself anymore. Way to go, Hinata. I knew you could do it. She blushed lightly at his praise, but nodded in acknowledgement. Arigato, Naruto-kun. He just smiled dumbly, stood up, and walked over to Yamato, knowing that he was about to call him over. Yamato, meanwhile, was rubbing his arm to try and get some feeling back into it. That attack to his arm was different from the normal hack attacks of the Jukin. He could still tell that chakra was running through that arm, but it seemed that the muscle she had struck was numb, trying his best to ignore it. He looked at Naruto, who seemed to be itching to start. Finding it quite humorous that the boy was eager for a sparring session, he chose to not let the boy keep on waiting. "Come on, Naruto, if you are ready." Naruto didn't even get in a fighting style position. He ran as fast as he could, which was incredibly fast, Yamato noted, and swung wildly. The problem with the way Naruto was fighting was that if an opponent wanted to hurt him, then his attacks would leave him wide open. The problem with that approach against Naruto was the fact that the blonde was quick on the recovery. Every time it would seem he would miss and start to take a tumble, he would just readjust almost immediately and strike at him again. If Yamato were to try and actually fight him instead of just blocking, he was pretty sure Naruto would be willing to trade a blow for a blow, which would be dumb. But that was how his fighting pattern right now was showing. It could be that Naruto realized that Yamato wasn't going to strike back and was just trying to avoid the one blow he had to land, and therefore was just trying to attack as fast as he could, as unpredictably as he could. For about 5 minutes straight, Naruto and Yamato went through the same process until Naruto had to stop real quick to catch his breath. "Damn, he's a bit faster than I thought he would be. I know he's hold back against us, but I didn't think he was using this much speed against Hinata." He closed his eyes and calmed himself. He had 25 more minutes before he would be asked to sit back down. It wouldn't do to just expend so much energy the first time around that he would be exhausted the rest of the day, in case he didn't land his blow on the first try. Finally calming himself, he decided to take another approach. He was actually going to pay attention to how Yamato was going about blocking and avoiding him. He didn't have Hinata's perceptive eyes, nor Sasuke's Sharingan eyes, but he didn't know whether or not it was as perceptive as the Byakugan, so he would just have to focus his mind so that he could pick up any sudden openings whenever they appeared. Opening his eyes, he stared at Yamato with a determined look, grinned, and then bolted right at him again. This time, he was moving faster, pumping chakra into his legs, and speeding his way towards the man, who took a defensive posture, ready for whatever happened. Sasuke sat and watched with careful interest, wanting to scout out their sensei as much as possible. He too had noticed the fact that the man was holding back against them. 1. Yamato only used ninjutsu against him, but that was because he had used ninjutsu to attack him. 2. He wasn't doing anything offensively, and while only on the defensive, even though it looked like he was blocking and dodging with speedy movements, they appeared to be sluggish and lazily performed. Yamato's speed was also being held back, and that quickly made him realize why this man had that strange allure to him. Sasuke had felt something different about him. A strange aura radiated from him, and Sasuke felt that this was the reason. The man was unnaturally strong for a Jounin-rank shinobi. I would have thought that the team I would be put on would be lucky if we got a strong enough instructor like that Kakashi that brother has spoken about. But now, if I'm correct, then we have an instructor who is AMBU level. This will prove to be very beneficial. He will definitely be able to help me get stronger. Snapped out of his thoughts, he saw Naruto miss with an axe kick he performed in the air while recovering from missing a horizontal kick to Yamato's head. When he landed, Naruto performed a backflip while thrusting his right foot at Yamato in a reverse crescent kick. Yamato backed up, narrowly missing the kick, and was thrown completely off guard by Naruto's next move, as was Sasuke. Did Naruto just do what I think he did? He certainly is a bit surprising. Maybe those first years at the academy don't tell the story of him. Naruto, after attempting that reverse crescent kick, landed in a crouch position and focused all of his body's weight into the front part of his feet, his hands on the ground, fingers extended and used to keep him balanced, and he started to pump a large amount of chakra into his feet. Looking up, he saw that Yamato, who had just backed up to avoid his last attack, was vulnerable and left himself open to a sudden and lightning-quick attack. Seizing this opportunity, the one he had been looking for the past 10 minutes since he changed his strategy, he launched himself right at Yamato. The chakra he had been building up at his feet, giving him an enormous boost and propelling towards his target. Yamato couldn't, even if he was moving at top speed, recover from avoiding Naruto's kick and react to the sudden attack he was now performing. Yamato was hit right at his sternum, the blow being incredible and with a surprising amount of force. What surprised Naruto was the fact that Yamato dissolved into dirt, and he had nothing but air left to travel until he would hit the ground. Tucking himself into a ball, he slowed his movement and spun in a 360-degree pattern and landed on the ground, applying chakra to his feet again to stick to it and slide across the ground. He then looked to where Yamato had been and saw him appear from the earth. "Sorry about that, Naruto. Guess it was just instinct," Yamato said to him, laughing lightly. "Yeah, okay. But what was that just now? Some kind of kawarimi?" Naruto asked him, not understanding what he did. "Yes, but it's a different variation of kawarimi. I apply the same principles, but instead of switching with a log or a clone or something along those lines, I gather chakra into the soil underneath me, and the chakra I put into the ground takes the form of me, and I just switch places with that one. Since my chakra has an affinity to water and earth, I'm able to do such things as that without much effort at all." Once again, Naruto was confused, but accepted the explanation. "Anyways, you passed that test. If I hadn't done that technique, you were definitely going to hit me and probably do some damage. You have a good grasp on how to control chakra and focus it. Your speed is most impressive, and you earned your victory. Go sit down and rest up. You probably used up a good bit of chakra so far today." Naruto nodded, smiling, and turned around to his fellow teammates, giving a thumbs up and smiling at them in the victory pose. Hinata giggled lightly, while Sasuke gave him an incredulous look as Naruto walked over to them. "Hey Dope, how come, if you were so good at chakra control, you had such a hard time in the academy?" It was bothering him that the boys seemed to have a much better grasp at using chakra and applying it to his limbs to assist in movement and stuff like that. Naruto gave him a quick glare for the Dope comment. "Well, I don't really know why. I guess I just forgot about it. We were always doing practices, and so I never really felt threatened or provoked enough to focus chakra to assist me. That's how I learned to use my chakra in that manner. Only as necessity." Sasuke gave a thoughtful look at the blonde boy who had been pegged early after the way he barely scraped by in the first year at the academy as an idiot. He guessed that since Naruto was the Yandame's son, that he expected more out of him. But all it really went to show was that you didn't have to be openly extraordinary to be good. Just because he wasn't good at academics didn't mean that he wasn't good at being a ninja. He smiled very slightly, so slightly it wasn't caught by Naruto, and stood up. He was determined to land his blow this time. He had enough time to calm down. If Naruto was able to do it, then he could too. Coming to his most recent conclusions, he decided that just because he was the best at the academy did not mean he was the very best around. All he had to do was land one blow, and that was all. He wasn't expected to defeat their sensei. Nobody could do that at their level. Walking towards Yamato, he stopped after only a few yards separated them. "Have you had enough time to calm down, Sasuke?" The boy nodded. "Are you going to try and burn me?" The boy shook his head. "Good. Then whenever you are ready." Sasuke didn't waste any time. He activated his Sharingan and ran straight at him. But instead of swinging like he did last time, he chose to slide down by Yamato's feet. Stopping right there, he rolled on his back till his body weight was on the back of his head. Using his hands, which were positioned close to his head, he shifted till his legs were in the air and tucked against his chest, and, pushing up with his hands, thrusted them right at Yamato's chest. Yamato did a couple of backflips and landed gracefully, sliding to a stop and awaiting Sasuke's next move. When he landed on his feet, Sasuke ran back to Yamato, aggravated that his attack didn't work, but pushing his aggravations aside. Punches and kicks were performed in rapid succession from the Uchiha boy, and blocks and dodges were performed against the assault by Yamato, and it went on like this for several minutes. Naruto was watching them fight, but decided to turn his attention to Hinata real quick. "So, you seem to have the easiest time out of all of us. You did really well, Hinata. I mean that." She again blushed from his compliment. Naruto was determined to get her out of her shell. She was still shy and a little timid, but she had definitely changed over the years. Her stutter had almost disappeared unless the attention of a group of people was put on her when she spoke. She still tended to remain quiet in a group, but if you asked her questions, she would be more open with the responses. What really made Naruto happy, though, was that she wasn't nervous around him anymore. She tended to get red-faced a little when speaking to him or when he would speak to her, but she laughed more and relaxed more when he was around than when they had first started hanging out with each other. It started about the end of their third year, and it slowly progressed more and more. He awaited her response to his compliment when she turned to look at him. "Thank you, Naruto-kun. You did very well yourself." "Yeah, I guess I did, even if I did it in an unorthodox method," he responded, scratching the back of his head. He was still paying attention to the action going on between their sensei and Sasuke. Sasuke was still attacking, but seemed to be getting winded while Yamato seemed to have not broken a sweat yet. But what I did was nothing compared to you. You knew exactly what you were doing. I was forced to improvise. She giggled at him again when he said that, the sight of him attempting a flying headbutt to their sensei being a very amusing thing to her. Naruto laughed too, but then stopped when he saw that Sasuke had landed his blow. Even though it was a glancing one, he still struck Yamato. Sasuke was getting fed up with constantly being blocked and dodged. He looked at how Yamato seemed to favor certain ways of blocking certain maneuvers, and after he pondered everything he had seen from Naruto and Hinata fighting him, as well as what had happened this time around, he came to a conclusion he believed would work. If one hit was all it took, then he would get him when he wouldn't expect it. Backing up a little from Yamato, Sasuke crouched down, took a runner's stance, and made up a line for him. When he was just a few feet away from him, he dipped down and gave a sweeping kick to Yamato's feet. When Yamato jumped back, Sasuke saw his opportunity. Since he had swept with his left leg from right to left, he was in a position to push off with his right leg to continue his pursuit against Yamato, which he did. Now, with the advantage, Sasuke pushed off with his right leg and brought his left knee out in front of him to strike. Yamato caught it out of reflex and realized he made a mistake. Using his momentum, Sasuke followed through by bringing his right knee up to strike at his midsection, but Yamato moved back to avoid that, only to be hit in his jaw by the same leg he just tried to avoid. Sasuke had extended the leg and aimed the toes out to strike at his sensei's jaw and connected, even if it was just a minor graze. He still had done it and was satisfied. It took about 20 minutes, but he had done it. Yamato rubbed his chin thoughtfully, not because it hurt. He smiled at Sasuke and was very pleased with their abilities already. Very good, Sasuke. Excellent, everyone. All three of you are far beyond my expectations already. Maybe you are ready for it. Sasuke was still smiling at his accomplishment, but was slightly confused by Yamato's words. Same one for Naruto and Hinata. What is it that you mean, Yamato-sensei? Asked Hinata, standing up and brushing off dirt from her baggy dark pants. A very good question, and for you to understand why I wouldn't have thought that you were ready for it, is because it is something that usually any shinobi doesn't do until probably the age of 15 or 16, but I think you are all ready for it. I'll explain during lunch. Let's go. They all set off out of their training area, making their way back to the main portion of Konoha and deciding on Ichiraku's ramen, to the delight of Naruto. About 10 or so minutes later, Naruto had already gone through his second bowl by the time everyone else was halfway through with their first bowl. Sasuke looked at him in disgust, the sloppy eating habits being unappetizing. Hinata giggled whenever he sighed with satisfaction after finishing a bowl, and Yamato just looked at him in awe and horror. This could end up costing him a good bit of money. When Naruto's third bowl was served by the daughter of the man who owned the shop, he dug into it but gave a curious glance to Yamato, who noticed it. After slurping up some noodles, he tried to ask him something, but the noodles in his throat got in the way. After gagging slightly and finally swallowing them, he proceeded to ask what he had tried to a moment ago. Yamato-sensei, you said you were going to explain this thing you were talking about, right? Yamato snapped back to reality, realizing that everyone seemed to be waiting for him. Yes, I was, Naruto. Thank you for reminding me. This thing I am referring to is a way to find out what it is you specialize in. In other words, what your chakra is more comfortable with. The looks of his young genins were telling him to continue. First off, before I get into this, I want you all to know exactly what your team is supposed to be. The past several years, the new genins have been separated into teams that specialize in a department, rather than just putting random people together that might end up not complementing each other. In your class, there were 9 who stood out. You 3, the 3 in Team 8, and the 3 in Team 10 each have a designated role and were therefore teamed up for that purpose. Team 8 is taught by Kurenai, who is a master of Genjutsu and is incredible in stealth. She will be teaching her team the art of spying and reconnaissance. Team 10 is being taught by Asuma, who is the son of the 3rd Hokage, is an excellent strategist and grappler. He will be able to assist his team and teach them the art of investigation and capturing. So Team 8 is a spy team and Team 10 is an investigations team? Asked Naruto. Yamato nodded. Then what is our team's purpose? What purpose do we serve? Asked Naruto again. Well, our team has no special abilities that separate you into a particular class of ninjas. But as it was proven out in the training field today, you all are particularly well balanced in the art of combat. Team 7 was formed with the full purpose of being this year's combat cell. You all have incredible potential, and it was felt that by putting you in a group that might not address that potential, then you would be going to waste. Naruto thoughtfully at the explanation. Sasuke was inwardly happy that that was their team's purpose, a combat cell. Hinata was a little mortified that she was put on a team that would be involved in combat more than the other teams, but she believed that everything would be okay. Besides, she got what she wanted. She was on a team with Naruto, just like she hoped, and she had the chance to make something of herself in her clan's eyes. Having said that, after we finish eating, we will head back to the training area and find out just what it is you all seem to favor. Naruto nodded and continued eating, deciding that this fourth bowl would be enough till supper later that evening. They all made their way back to Area 13 and were told to go ahead and relax or do whatever for a few more minutes, that he would be back after retrieving something from his home. So what do you guys think of all this? Naruto asked Hinata and Sasuke. They both looked at him. Hinata looked she didn't know what to say, and Sasuke just shrugged his shoulders. I mean, I know he is skilled. You can tell that just by taking a look at him that he is skilled. But the whole thing about us being designated an attack team is kind of heavy. I want to become stronger, and this seems like the best fit for all of us, but look at who we are. Sasuke, you are the youngest son of the head of the Uchiha clan. Hinata is the eldest daughter of the head of the Hyuga clan and is their designated heir. I'm the son of the Hokage. We were all put on a team that will see more combat than the rest of the teams. Don't you think something is amiss about this? Again, Hinata didn't say anything, but you see that what Naruto said affected her. Her shoulders seemed tense, as did her hands, and her eyes were diverted to the ground. Sasuke decided to speak up, though. Yeah, so what? Big deal. It just means that they have faith in us, or they're trying to kill us. Either way, it doesn't matter. If you aren't strong enough for this, then you need to get out. Any second thoughts need to get out. I won't let the fact that we will see a fair share of combat situations deter me from my goal. I will become stronger than my brother and gain my father's recognition. Naruto couldn't help but see Sasuke in a different light after that little display. Sasuke seemed truly passionate at that moment. Maybe there was hope for him, after all. Or perhaps being humbled by their sensei an hour and a half ago helped deflate his ego. Naruto looked over to see Hinata standing there, slightly less tense, but not relaxed like he wanted her to be. Yeah, you're right, Sasuke. I was just thinking it curious is all. We were, in fact, placed on the team that they thought best suited us, for what Yamato Sensei told us. We'll become strong. Hell, I'd wager we'll become the strongest in this village's history. What do you think, Hinata? She seemed to loosen up, and when she looked up, there was new confidence in her. I think that maybe we can help each other achieve our goals. That is what a team is supposed to do after all. Naruto cheered inside. It might appear strange to someone else that Naruto would be happy when someone else succeeded, but that was just him being him. They then heard what sounded like something digging through the ground, turned around, and saw their sensei, arms crossed across his chest, and looking at them with satisfaction. They seemed to fidget underneath his gaze, probably finding it awkward. All right, you three, I have something for you, but before I give it to you, a few quick rules. 1. Don't do anything to it, because if you damage it, I'll have to go back and get some more, and these are really hard to come by. 2. Listen to my instructions carefully after you receive yours. He then opened up one of his hands to reveal 3 sheets of small paper. Walking up to them, he handed Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata one paper. They all looked at it dumbly, waiting for further instructions. Good. At least you can follow simple instructions. All right. Now, when I tell you to, I want you to force a fair amount of chakra into these sheets and wait for a reaction. The paper is of a special material that analyzes any chakra that is infused into it, and the consequential reaction that occurs tells you what element your chakra favors. Sasuke, let's start with you. Sasuke looked at a sheet of paper and started to mold chakra into it. A few seconds later, it glowed a light, pale orange, and then disintegrated in a black ash and was blown away by a small breeze. I should have expected, but your chakra favors the fire element. I'll be sure to help you in that field when we train. Next, you Hinata. Hinata molded chakra into her paper sheet and waited. It suddenly glowed a faint blue and became damp. Yours seems to favor the water element, which is expected coming from your fighting style. He cut himself off, though, as he noticed that the damp material started to crumple slightly at the edges and was doing it more and more. Could that be just from the dampening of the sheet? Or could her chakra level already have two affinities? He ignored it for now and decided to approach the matter later. Naruto, now you. The boy molded the chakra and waited. Everyone looked at his paper sheet, saw it turn a light, hazy green before it cut itself in half. Wow, your chakra has an affinity towards the wind element. That is considered the most offensive of styles, Naruto. Now, the reason I did this is so I know how to approach you all when I train you. We will be working with Taijutsu, and I will help you in areas you are weak in, like Jinjutsu, he said, focusing his attention on Sasuke and Naruto, who just fidgeted under his gaze. But as your papers have shown, you three have different affinities and therefore do not share the ability to learn the same techniques. I will assist each of you individually in this approach, and we'll see how everything ends up working out. Okay. Hi, Yamato Sensei, responded the three genin. Good, now let's finish up with some stamina building drills, and we'll call it a day, huh? He had them working for the next 5 hours until they were on the brink of chakra exhaustion, which he preferred to avoid, so he had them stop when he felt it necessary. Once the sun began to descend, he called for them to stop for the day. Quickly going back over their instructions for tomorrow, he sent them on their way back to their homes, where they would take hot showers or baths, trying their best to soothe and relax their tired and sore muscles. When they reached the point where they would split up, Naruto said goodbye to Hinata and Sasuke. Hinata responded to him, as he expected, and she extended a good-night wish to Sasuke as well. Sasuke pondered for a second, then smiled very slightly again. Naruto thought that maybe his brain had played a trick on him when he heard Sasuke say goodnight to them. My God, did I just hear the great Uchiha Sasuke wish his teammates a good evening? Oh my God, Hinata, quick, my ears might start bleeding. Help me, he said in mock terror, eventually breaking down into gleeful laughter, grabbing his sides as he did so. Oh, Naruto-kun, that's not very nice now. She responded to him, but found it hard not to join in with him. The boy's laughter was still as contagious as it was 4 years ago. Hey, Dobe, keep up the sarcasm and you just might need her help, said Sasuke, looking at Naruto, not in an agitated or aggravated expression, but also not in a very friendly way. At least it was more friendly than it had been. Naruto finally stopped his laughing and waved at his teammates as he went back to his home, excited about what tomorrow might hold. Upon reaching his home, however, he found out from his mother that father hadn't returned yet and was probably still at the tower. What could he still be doing there at this time? He thought to himself. The yondaime was sipping his sake from a small saucer-like cup, his cheeks holding a slight red tint from a good buzz. Jiraiya was hiccuping and probably a good bit drunk. They were laughing about something, but Erasure just couldn't recall what it was they were laughing about. He heard a knock on his door and told him to come on in, but was instantly sobered by the face of the person that walked through. Arashi-sensei, I apologize, but Itachi didn't want to leave until he spoke to you about something. Upon hearing the young boy's name, Itachi walked into the room, taking a careful look at the fourth and Jiraiya and the bottle of sake on the desk. Enjoying ourselves, are we, Hokage-sama? Asked the monotone voice of Itachi. Erasure chuckled, but stopped quickly enough and gave a serious look at Jiraiya, who straightened up under his gaze. Jiraiya-sensei, go ahead back to the house and tell my wife and boy that I will be back in a few more minutes, okay? Jiraiya nodded and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Now, it was just the three remaining. Okay, Itachi, you can seal the door now. Itachi turned to the door, making sure it was close, and put his hand gently against the frame. His chakra began pouring into the door and the door frame, effectively sealing the room off. No one could open the door or listen in. Turning around, he looked at one of the few ninjas that he actually feared facing in a one-on-one encounter and took a seat across from him. Erasure, finally shaking off the hazy vision from drinking sake slowly throughout the afternoon, rested his chin on top of his hands, which were propped up by his elbows on the desk. The gaze of Itachi, while always appearing to be intense, seemed to hold an abnormal amount of tension in them. I'm supposing that Kakashi can be trusted to be in here with us? Yes, Kakashi is more trustworthy than my sensei, Jiraiya. Trust me when I say so. Now, do you have some news for me? Yes, Hokage-sama. I have news that must come to your attention. Erasure paid careful attention to what might come next. It's in regards to my father. Chapter 6, Secrets of the Families. Babalamupe. Naruto fidgeted in his bed. Babalamupe. What the hell is making that noise? He thought to himself. Babalamupe. I thought I got rid of the alarm clock. What the hell is waking me up? He screamed inwardly as he shot up in his bed, ready to smash his alarm clock, only to see it wasn't there. Then what was making the noise? He heard it again, like a pulse, coming from somewhere around him. It was in his room, he was sure of that, but exactly where he didn't know. Closing his eyes, he focused his chakra to his ears, something Jiraiya had taught him to do in order to pick up the slightest noises. Babalamupe. He opened his eyes bitterly, realizing the noise was coming from his closet. He threw the sheets off the bed, leaving them looking disheveled. He scooted off the bed hurriedly and stormed his way to his closet. Gripping the handle, he slid the door open and peered into the closet carefully, listening for the sound it made. Babalamupe. He looked down and saw a long, thin box that seemed to be vibrating. Bending down and grabbing it angrily, he threw off the box's lid and looked at the contents and instantly calmed. He was still angry at being awoken a bit early, the sun not even rising yet, but the way the wind blew told him it was close to 6 o'clock, but that attitude was replaced by one of intrigue. The content of this box was something he did not believe to have any use whatsoever. On the day of his 9th birthday, he received many tools, scrolls, and parchments, but this one was given to him by his father. We tried to read it. Nothing happened. He questioned his father on its use, but the only response he got was, "You'll know when the time comes." He took the thick scroll out, surprised that a thing this big could fit into a box so small, and undid the rope that was used to tie it closed. He unrolled the scroll and smoothed it out, not sure why this thing was giving off such a unique chakra wave. It suddenly pulsed with one more of those BA bumps before something amazing happened. It glowed an umbearish color, and right before his eyes, words materialized. Uzumaki's secret scroll. To bind you to this scroll, give proof of your heritage. Naruto sat down and pondered what that could mean. He then remembered seeing his father sign scrolls in his own blood before, a sign of an official documentation of him. Naruto bit his forefinger till it bled and signed his name on the scroll. Naruto waited for a moment before the bloody letters began to glow brightly and swirl towards the center of the scroll, making a red swirl, the Uzumaki's seal, and then fading, as if absorbed by the material. A moment later, from waiting for something to happen, beard fruits to the blonde boy. Words formed on one corner of the scroll and gave a detailed description of what appeared to be a technique. A jutsu? This thing contains jutsus? But it said Uzumaki's secret scroll. Does that mean that these are my father's techniques? He was left speechless. The thing he considered to be junk had actually ended up being his father's legacy. Jumping to his feet, he ran out of his room in a hurry. Hopefully I can catch him before he leaves for the office. Running as quietly as he could, as fast as he could, he turned through corners and down hallways until he made his way to the garden, where his father always drank his morning tea before going off to work. And he was there this morning too.